This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto has Minato and Kushina sealed inside of him because of Orochimaru. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Not wasting no more time, let's start the story.
September 10th in the Ho no Kuni, more especially in Konohagakure no Sato, it was a lovely morning. Ho no Kuni's ninja village was Konoha, where the Hokage was sitting in his office in Hokage Tower in the center of the village, beginning work on his dreaded paper. He yawned and complained, "Oh, I hate this. Shakusho, paperwork. I would rather have the 4 Ninja World War than this damned paperwork." Yandaime Hokage Namikaze Minato had just been appointed. He was about 179.2 centimeters tall and 28 years old. He has sunshine blonde hair with jaw-length bangs framing his bright blue eyes. A short, sleeved long white coat with flame-like motifs on the edges, the kanji for 4th Hokage, written vertically down the back, and a thin orange rope closing the front were all part of his standard Konoha ninja uniform, which included 2 bands on each of his sleeves, a flak jacket, and a forehead protector. His nickname was Konoha no Kiroi Senko, and he was a veteran of the 3rd Ninja World War and a war hero. He was ranked as an SS class, a never before awarded rank that included a flee no sight order in all bingo books, because he destroyed the massive armies of Iwagakure no Sato that were engaged in combat with Konohagakure at the time. He was an expert in Jikukan ninjutsu and Ninpo Fuinjutsu. The Hiroshin no Jutsu, an S-class jutsu he invented, was what he was using. The 5 elemental nations began to stabilize following the conclusion of the 3rd Ninja World War, and the smaller nations followed suit. The Hokage is supposed to be the strongest ninja in the village, so Namikaze Minato stands at the top of the ninja food chain since Konoha and its allies won the war. However, only a select few people knew that the Hiroshin no Jutsu was a Kekkei Genkai that had been lost and believed to be extinct for more than 80 years. In actuality, though, the Namikaze clan had not vanished but had instead taken refuge under the watchful eye of the recently established Konohagakure no Sato. Only the Shodem Hokage is aware of the clan, which has assumed the role of Konoha's covert protector and been granted the same privileges as the Uchiha and Senju clans. However, because of the ongoing conflicts, their numbers have shrunk to the point where only Namikaze Minato remains. He was considering how he had begun to reconstruct his clan and make it known that he was a member of the fabled and old Senko clan, Ka clan of Namikaze. Prior to Rikudo Sennin's appearance, his clan was an old clan of shinobi. Ninjutsu and genjutsu were ideal for assassinations and stealth, but his clan did not use them because they did not use chakra. Their bodies had the fastest reflexes, so even a Sharingan user couldn't replicate the jutsu used by a Namikaze. They also had a Kekkei Genkai called Kaisoku, which allowed their minds to process information and gave them an IQ higher than that of the renowned Nara clan. They were the Senko clan before they were the shinobi. When he sensed his wife had entered his office, he abruptly stopped thinking. She noticed that he was thinking deeply, so she shut the door to avoid disturbing him. She attempted to enter the office covertly, but her husband caught her and gave her a hug in return. After kissing her nape and beginning to nibble at her earlobe, she blushed and groaned. She shuddered as he licked and kissed her outer ear before abruptly stopping and returning to his chair while grinning broadly. Despite her frustration, his wife was still flushed scarlet. She wanted to scream at her baka husband for making her feel attracted to him, but she was unable to do so. Namikaze Minato was grinning and foolishly scratching the back of his head with his right hand, clearly enjoying himself. Minato.kun. You know that you're not supposed to do that to me since I am in 9th month databane, said his wife, who was extremely attractive. Minato laughed and responded, and you know that you are supposed to give birth by the 10th month, so don't worry Kushina-chan. The so-called Akai Chishio no Habanero, Uzumaki Kushina, was 28 years old and descended from the Uzumaki clan of Uzushiogakure, which was long since destroyed. Her hair was long and bright red, reaching down to her calves. The left strand was parted with a hair clip, and the other strands framed both sides of her face. She wore a loose, fitting, high-collared dress with an apron over it, a black band on her left wrist, and regular sandals. She had a lovely face, fair skin, and shiny violet eyes. Before he snapped out of his reverie and blushed too, he began to imagine and think to himself, she has such an amazing chest but they grew even bigger, toned stomach, now heavily pregnant, curvaceous full thighs, now much more fuller, and muttered something about a perverted sensei. He ignored the remark and coughed in his fist. What's wrong, Minato.kun? Is it really that difficult to not think of anything perverted about me? Hentai, she giggled, seeing her blush. Kushina then chuckled at her perverted husband's ridiculous antics. She pouted and said in a sad but endearing voice, but Yoko, I was bored at home. I had nothing and Sandame's wife Bawako. Sama keeps telling not to do anything at all, just walk around and eat. He asked, what are you doing here, Koishi? I thought you were asleep. You must do anything tiring so you and my Sochi can be all right. He then gave it some thought and felt sorry for her. He rose from his seat, approached her, took her shoulders, and began giving her a passionate kiss. After a brief period of days, Kushina awoke and gave him a passionate kiss in return, flowing with more than enough fire. After they parted ways, Kushina blushed and questioned, what was that for? Not that I didn't like. With a note of regret in his voice, Minato said, it's because I am apologizing for not being there with you. He then let his head fall, concealing his eyes. He was ecstatic about what his Koishi had said to him. You're such a baka hubby, Yoko. That is why I love you so. I know you are busy, but what to do? You are the Hokage. You must protect not only me and our son but the entire village, so I forgive you. Baka hero.san? She responded. He knelt on one knee, kissed her very pregnant belly, and said, you are lucky little one, having such a mother. He was also gently rubbing and touching her. Minato was shocked when she laughed and felt a kick. He was incredulous that he and his Koishi were going to have a child. He had no idea that he would soon become a father. Together, they chuckled and inquired as to her plans for tonight. He simply laughed out loud when she gave him a direct look. Although it was a joyful day, things will soon change. Konohagakure no Sato, October 10th. The night was gloomy and dark. The crimson glow of the moon was gloomy and unsettling. The Konoha shinobi felt a chill run down their spines from the chilling, menacing wind. Two sent to patrol the village's edge believed a negative event was imminent. One of them was the Yondaime Hokage's student Hitaki Kakashi Jonin, and the other was Mito Guy, who claimed to be his eternal rival. They were discussing this strange evening. What an odd night this is, Guy. A loud explosion was heard from roughly 20 miles outside Konoha's boundaries. Kakashi then yelled, we must report this to Minato. Sensei immediately, as Guy yelled, what was that? 20 miles or so from Konohagakure, two dubious-looking people were moving slowly. These two individuals, if you may call them that, were extremely peculiar. One featured an Anbu snake mask with golden yellow snake-like eyes visible through the eyeholes, while the other featured an orange mask with horizontal black tiger strips. The right eye had a single eyehole, and the color was crimson with 3 swirling tomos. Was that necessary, Madara? You have woken the whole village to our surprise attack? The snake man asked the orange-masked man in an angry tone. What is there to worry about? Nothing can stop us, let alone a hidden village Orochimaru, with the Kyuubi no Yoko. You fulfilled your half of the bargain by figuring out where the Kyuubi was hiding, so now let me do mine. You do know that I have total control over the Kyuubi with my Sharingan. You do want the last Uzumaki, don't you? He said, remaining silent. The Hokage Tower in Konohagakure. When Kakashi and Guy arrived at Minato's office, Sandame Sarutobi Sama was completing the routine Hokage paperwork. After halting his work, Sandame turned to face the two children and asked them angrily, what is the meaning of this? Kakashi responded, Sandame. Sama. A disturbance heard about 20 or more kilometers away. It might be an explosion, so we came as fast as we could to tell Minato, Sensei. By the way, Sarutobi Sama, where is Yondaime? Sama? Inquired Guy. Oh, you don't know? Kushina. Chan has gone into labor about 5 hours ago and Bawako Chan is with her. Minato-kun is in the hospital with her right now. Kakashi looked concerned and said, okay, what do we do about that explosion, Sandame? Sama. Sandame promised to send a team to look into what transpired there. With a swift bow, Kakashi and Guy departed the office to head to the hospital. In the meantime, in the hospital, Minato was pacing the corridor in front of the delivery ward with trepidation. He was unconcerned about the whiteness of the place and the strong odor of sterilizers and medications. A slight tremor then struck, and he cautiously looked, only to discover that he was the only one experiencing it. It felt like this was far away, and must have been something large. Since he had no time to worry about anything but his wife and soon be Sochi, he remembered where he was and put it out of his mind. Then Minato noticed two people and sensed that someone was approaching him swiftly. Minato exclaimed, Yo, Kakashi and Guy, what are you two doing in the hospital? I hope that none of you were injured. No, we are not, Minato. Sensei, but did you feel that tremor just now? Kakashi asked, panting and catching his breath due to the exhausting effort of running from one end of the village to the other and then to the hospital. However, Mito Guy stood there grinning foolishly, holding his right hand in the good Guy pose, and he laughed as he said, ha ha ha. My eternal rival, I beat you at. I was here first, Kakashi. Oh, you say something, Guy? seemed to be Kakashi's response. Guy muttered something about cool and hip rivals as a result. Then they heard the Yondaime laughing, and he said, "You know Kakashi, I am about to be a father." "Me? A father? I can't believe it, Kakashi?" Kakashi and Guy congratulated him on his new role as a father, and Kakashi added, "Sensei, you will be a great father." They both noticed that Minato's face was pale, hard, and cold, as if something terrible was going to happen, and it was drained of all its color. An authoritative voice asked, "Did you report your findings to the Sandaime?" The abrupt shift in his demeanor caused both boys to freeze. Together, they said, "Hi," as they stood at attention in front of the Hokage. After Kakashi left the Hokage's office, the Sandaime called his secretary and instructed her to send an investigative team to him right away. After bowing, she went to retrieve the team. The Sandaime thought to himself, "I hate this crappy job, not one day back, and I have a feeling that something terrible is going to happen. First, the Yondaime had to deal with my favorite student who went horribly wrong and had escaped somehow before Minato-kun got there, and now this. This is going to be a very long night indeed." 5 minutes later, the door opened, allowing a squad of 4 ninjas to enter. They had no time for formalities, so they all bowed to the Sandaime, and he signaled them to stop with a raised hand. In a Hokage's voice, he said, "I need you 4 to investigate that tremor felt by Kakashi and Guy at the southern gate." He looked at them and saw that they were the ideal team for the investigation because they had the Abarame's insects, Byakugan eyes, an Inuzuka nose and canine companion, and a Uchiha as the team leader. "Anything happens there, immediately retreat and report back to me at once. Is that clear?" replied the Sandaime. The ninjas all nodded, bowed, and turned to leave the office, but they stopped when the old Hokage said, "Good luck and come back safely." They then bowed once more and fled to the designated spot. With a heavy sigh, the elderly man sat there thinking, "Good luck, men, I think you'll need it." Konohagakure no Sato is 10 kilometers away. With a joyful voice, Orochimaru declared, "I detest these Anbu masks. I prefer my opponents to see my face when I kill them." He was eager to murder the Konoha ninja who had deceived him. "Oh, you are really into this, aren't Orochimaru? Or is it that you will get an Uzumaki and a Uchiha that got you so hyped up?" Madara exploded. Orochimaru was startled, but he kept it to himself. Madara narrowed his eyes and gave him a glare of anger as he responded, "Oh really, I did want a Uchiha, but now that you mentioned it I think I might get one on the way back." "Oh, I thought you didn't about your clan, Madara. You're not getting soft, are you?" Orochimaru smirked evilly at him. "Oh, not really, but I don't want you to gain too much power, that's all," Madara responded, unfazed by the jest. "I think when we are about 5 kilometers from Konoha, we will begin the operation, understood?" instructed Madara. "I have to get the Uzumaki, then I will get the Uchiha so that I can be perfect and I will be able to learn every jutsu in the world, and I have to find the weakness to this damn Uchiha." "Kukakuku," Orochimaru thought as he smirked and turned to face Konohagakure no Sato. Following the snake's thought process, Madara said, "I have to make sure that Orochimaru does gain much more power so that I can easily eliminate him later." Then, turning to face Orochimaru, he said, "Hey, we have company at 12 o'clock. They're 4 ninjas. Be prepared to finish them off." Orochimaru's smile widened as he considered how to kill those ninjas. Then, from beneath his cloak, he produced his sword, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi. Ku no Tachi. Konohagakure no Sato is 7 kilometers away. The investigative team was operating at full capacity. In order to see ahead, the leader asked the Hyuga to use his Byakugan. He nodded, then exclaimed, "Byakugan." His pupils emerged and the veins at the sides of his lavender eyes swelled. The colors in his vision were reversed. He was able to travel several kilometers. Less than a kilometer away, he saw 2 men wearing black cloaks and possessed a great deal of chakra. What was strange, though, was that one of them had a very evil chakra, while the other had a very familiar, disgusting, and unsettling chakra. After focusing on their faces, he turned to examine the other one. The one with the evil chakra, however, was wearing an orange mask with black horizontal tiger stripes and 1 eye hole on the right eye. Fortunately or unfortunately, Orochimaru was the other one because he was not wearing a mask, he was holding Kusanagi no Tsurugi, Ku no Tachi, and he appeared to be staring straight at him. A smirk began to form on his pallid face. He then spoke to the man wearing the mask, and the Hyuga, who could read lips, told his commanding officer about it. After saying, "Orochimaru is saying that he is going to kill us, and since they have a Hyuga, a Uchiha, an Inuzuka, and an Aburame in our group." The Uchiha suddenly fell to the ground and was transformed into a log with the sword in the center of it. Orochimaru made fun of him by saying, "Oh, he used the Kawarimi no Jutsu. Smart." All of the ninja considered fighting, but they were reminded that the Sandaime Hokage was of a different order. After exchanging glances, they all nodded. To blind Orochimaru, they all pulled out 2 smoke and flash bombs and set them off at the same time, producing a massive smoke and light flash. They all created a single Kage Bunshin and substituted their clones for themselves using Kawarimi. After all, Orochimaru, one of the Sannin, had about 10 minutes before he would pursue them. In order to get to Konohagakure, they had to run as fast as they could. Madara materialized at Orochimaru's side as he swore. "Look at what you have done. Now I have to go ahead of the intended plan. I will summon the Kyuubi now, so be ready, okay?" she said, casting a dismayed glance at him. He then used a kunai to prickle his thumb, performed 5 hand signals, and concluded by yelling, "Kushios no Jutsu." A Keiyaku Fuin then materialized on the ground, followed by a massive puff of smoke. The legendary Kyuubi no Kitsune appeared as a gigantic creature after the smoke had cleared. With a loud roar, Kyuubi gazed at the village. "I hope my pet didn't scare you, did it?" Madara said smugly as he turned to face the startled Orochimaru. Even his strongest summoning, Manda, lacked this size and chakra, so Orochimaru was impressed and began to perspire uncomfortably. After giving him the order, a dimensional spiral began to form on his mask and spread throughout his body before he disappeared without a trace. "I am going to get your Uzumaki. You go after them and kill them." In the hospital 15 minutes ago, the Yondaime and his wife were in the delivery room, and he used his left hand to gently squeeze and hold her left hand. With his right hand on her head, he stroked her long, gorgeous red hair while offering words of support. Because of Kushina's labor pain, he was extremely anxious. "Come on, Kushina-san. You can do it. I just one more push and you're done. One last push, come on, you can do this," said the doctors performing the delivery. The sound of a crying infant could then be heard after Kushina exerted all of her strength. When the doctor said, "Congratulations, you got a bouncing baby boy," the nurse who was taking the whiner to his mother exclaimed, "Oh, he is so cute, definitely takes after his father." The baby stopped crying as soon as his mother held him, and Kushina extended her arms to embrace him. When Kushina looked at her baby boy, she noticed that he inherited his mother's face and eyes shape, but he also had his father's renowned blonde hair and an even deeper set of blue eyes that resembled the vast dark blue ocean. She then turned to Minato, who was beaming with happiness at the birth of his son, and said, "I am your Ka-chan, Sochi-chan." The doctor brought the documents for them to sign and said, "Sorry to interrupt, but what is your Sochi's name? Can you come with me, Hokage Sama, to do the necessary paperwork? But before that, sign here, both you and Kushina." "Sama, about your Sochi's name?" He reached out and stroked his cheek and touched his Sochi's face. "Welcome, Sochi. I am your father, oh god, I am a father," he said. The Yondaime exchanged glances with his spouse. "Our Sochi's name is Namikaze Naruto," they exclaimed joyfully, recalling the book Jiraiya Sensei wrote. They then took the papers and handed them to a ninja to deliver to the Sandaime Hokage after the doctor and nurse signed them as witnesses. They also handled the delivery and placed the documents in an envelope. The doctor took the document from him, put it in an envelope, and handed it to a ninja to deliver to the Sandaime. After grabbing the envelope, the ninja hurried over to Sandaime. Naruto was taken from his mother by the nurse to be washed. As the doctor and nurse dried his tiny body and wrapped him in a fresh blanket, the Yondaime left the room to follow them. Baby Naruto was returned to his mother's room by the nurse. As she embraced her child and rocked him to sleep, she returned him to his mother, who was waiting with open arms. As soon as the nurse turned to face the door, she saw a figure at the rear of the room. The figure approached Kushina from behind, applied pressure, and knocked her unconscious. The nurse turned as he was about to speak to the sleeping infant, then quietly heaved her on his shoulder. The moment she screamed, the man grabbed the infant and pulled out a kunai. The door flew open a nanosecond later, and the Yondaime rushed into the room. After that, he noticed a man wearing a black cloak with a hood over his head and an orange spiral with a single eye hole on his right eye. The Yondaime adopted a warlike expression. He squatted in an aggressive position. His eyes froze holes in the orange masked man and grew cold. Minato was on the verge of retrieving his infamously marked kunai from his kunai holster. However, the masked man warned, pointing his kunai at the Hokage's son's jugular. "Stop it right there. Do you want your son to die at the ripe old age of 5 minutes?" The Yondaime grumbled and asked in an icy voice. "Who are you? What do you want from my wife and child? Are you here for some kind of revenge against me?" The Yondaime looked at the masked man with wide eyes as he realized that he was referring to Orochimaru when he signed, "I have nothing personal here. I am only doing my side of a bargain with a snake." Then, in a tone of matter of factness, he heard the man say, Yes, Orochimaru wants your wife, but your son is an insurance policy against you. That's all there is to it. And 2 is who I am. I am Uchiha Madara. When Minato heard the name of the masked man, his expression changed from one of rage at Orochimaru to one of complete surprise. That is impossible. Uchiha Madara died due to the battle he had with the Shoden Hokage. Sama, Senju Hashirama. Sama, he exclaimed. No, I did not die, but I lose badly. I have had a wound that did not heal to this day. You will get your son back after Orochimaru gets what he needs from the Uzumaki. Since only the Hokage and those close to Kushina knew that his wife was from the Uzumaki clan and they swore secrecy on her identity, the Yondaime are now too incensed to be shocked about how they found out. Then, with the space surrounding his right eye forming a spiral, Madara began a jutsu that the Yondaime had never seen before. It went on until it engulfed him entirely and he vanished into thin air. The Yondaime was aware that he could not fight fairly with Orochimaru by his side. He therefore made the decision to seek assistance from the Sandaime in order to retrieve his wife and son from the 2 S-class missing ninja. He looked determined to defend his loved ones and the village. The Kyuubi and Orochimaru region. Since it is well known that the Uzumaki clan is renowned for their extraordinarily long lifespan, the mad scientist inside Orochimaru asked, what is taking him so long? As he hurried to conduct new experiments on the Uzumaki's body, he wanted to find out why they live so long and whether it is copied. Then he feels Madara use his jutsu, and he breaks out of his reverie. Madara showed up and stated, here you go, I got you your Uzumaki. And stay away from the baby, as we had angered the Yondaime Hokage and we have not to do with his son. Orochimaru looked disappointed at having to part with such a rare specimen after he saw the knocked out red head, which he identified as belonging to the Uzumaki woman, and then a small bundle. Madara gave the order to attack Konoha in his mind after glancing at the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi rose and bounded toward the village with all its might. The southern gate and outer wall were destroyed when it landed in a massive explosion. When it roared, the southern gate, the outer wall, and a few nearby buildings were all blown away by the force of the roar, which also caused an explosion. The whole village was warned of an impending attack. The Konoha ninja had left their house ready to fight an enemy. They were all terrified when they realized that their adversary was actually the demon fox, which had the ability to level mountains and cause tsunamis with a single tail swing. They nevertheless continued to protect their house from the monster. The civilians were terrified to death as the Kyuubi stormed into Konoha and destroyed everything. The giant fox was attacked by the Konoha ninja of Chunin and higher levels, who used a variety of weapons. The great beast was unfazed by the attack and used its tails to swat them like flies. Kyuubi's attack in the Hokage tower before the old Hokage was waiting for something when he walked into the room, but it had not yet arrived. He read the document and handed it to him. With a smile on his face, he took the Hokage's stamp and used it to formally legalize the document. The door suddenly flew open, and the old Hokage suddenly pulled out a kunai, which also took the ninja with him. The Hokage relaxed as 4 figures entered the room and asked, "What is the meaning of this?" He glanced at the 4 ninja, who appeared to have been in hell, and bowed in apology. The Sandaime received the message and dismissed the ninja along with the leader, who said, "Hokage Sama, we have some very disturbing news." The ninja bowed and vanished in a puff of smoke. The old Hokage ordered, "Okay, now tell me what happened out there." The leader began his report with a bow. A flashback from 20 minutes ago. The leader interrupted his team when he heard a sword pierce the air, saying, "We must get to the village at once to inform Hokage Sama. Scatter!" He yelled, and they did, so that the same sword that Orochimaru had come flying in pierced the tree branch and then the ground beneath them. They outnumbered Orochimaru 4 to 1 when he was fighting them. He continued to play with them, though, as they would use taijutsu to attack him from 4 different directions. He would slip through them like the snake he is, not even attacking, just dodging. After becoming irritated, Konoha ninja began using ninjutsu. After yelling his clan's favorite jutsu, Kaden Gukakyu no Jutsu, and performing 5 hand signals, the Uchiha leader led the group back to Konoha, with Orochimaru pursuing them. But when they noticed a huge shadow between the trees, they were startled and believed Orochimaru had called forth a huge snake. When the Uchiha leader ordered the Hyuga to investigate, he was completely taken aback by what he saw. They all escaped, though not without injuries, as he was attempting to explain what he had witnessed when a hail of kunai fell upon them. While the Inuzuka and Aburame suffered a few deep gashes on their arms and torsos from kunais, the Uchiha and Hyuga emerged with minor cuts and scratches because the Uchiha had the Sharingan and the Hyuga had the Byakugan. Zansatsu Mizuru no Jutsu. Uchiha then made some hand gestures to create a genjutsu and exclaimed, "A little more guys and we are home free." Let's go. They went, and Hyuga noticed that Orochimaru had been tricked by Genjutsu for 5 minutes, which gave them all the time they needed to enter Konoha. The end of the flashback. Not expecting his favorite student to return so soon for retribution, Sandame's face appeared as though he saw the Shinigami himself. Then he remembered something was off, and he asked the Hyuga, "But what I don't get is what did see you that made you freeze like that?" "I saw the Kyuubi," the Hyuga said tremblingly, his face going pale as he recalled. "No Yoko Kyuubi. And it had its eyes on you." "Nani?" the old Hokage said. "Before I say anything, Sandame Sama, I need your assistance in rescuing my wife and child from a man who proclaimed that he was Uchiha Madara." It would be an understatement to say that the old Hokage was shocked, but he said, "I thought it was Orochimaru who was attacking the village." His men bowed and fled in fear as they saw the Yondaime Hokage's face, which was filled with a flash of yellow light. The Sandame, wearing a black jumpsuit with gray shoulder armor, a gauntlet on his right arm, a leaf forehead protector bandana with long straps, and a ninja helmet that he wears underneath, was prepared for battle when a huge explosion was heard and the earth began to shake. The kanji for fire, Huo, Hai, was inscribed on the back of the outfit, and he had 2 shuriken holsters strapped to either side of his back. He then bit his right thumb, performed 5 hand signs, and concluded by yelling, "Kushios no Justu, Enku, Enma." The Monkey King Enma then materialized in front of them with a puff of smoke after Keiyaku Fuin had fallen to the ground. "What do you need of me, Sarutobi, Enma?" said the Monkey King. "Here we have a risky situation." Sarutobi Hiruzen stated, "Kyuubi no Kitsune is attacking the village, and Uchiha Madara and Orochimaru are the cause of this." "Nani? Kami? Sama, what a horrible combination, your ailing student and a man who was believed to be dead about 80 years ago. I am aware that Orochimaru will act in this manner, but Sarutobi, when did this occur?" "I don't know, he just left before we chose who would be the Yondaime. And when I heard about it was too late to get him back or kill him for that matter." Sadly replied the Sandame. He intended to create Orochimaru the Yondaime, but he simply left after leaving his pupil Anko with a strange mark on her neck. "She was nearly dead when we discovered her. He became an S-class missing ninja as a result of this incident." With a firm voice, Sandame said, "Now Enma, change to your staff form and get ready to do battle with my former student." Enma nodded and yelled, "Henge! Konganyoy!" before making a staff and leaping to Sandame's hand. "Okay Sandame. Sama, you go help the ninja and I will stop you, former student, and so called immortal," the Yondaime said, glancing at the battle. "Ready Sandame." The Yondaime countered, "You have to help the ninja defend from the Kyuubi." "I have an idea Sandame. Sama, you and ninja give time to get wife and child as I battle both Orochimaru and Madara, then be back to help you with the Kyuubi." The Sandame agreed that 2 cage-level ninjas must not leave the village. One must stay to protect it in any case. "No, I am going with you. I want to stop my former student myself, since he is my responsibility," responded Sandame. "Okay, no, this I don't like it one bit, as you're going to face not one but 2 S-class missing ninja. Let Kami Sama be with you." "Okay, arigato gozaimasu. Taoji.san." The Yondaime nodded. He got up and prepared for battle, focusing on finding the Shiki and placing it on her chest in case they were separated in combat or, in this case, abducted. He focused on the entire area around the village and for roughly 20 kilometers beyond. He found her and opened his eyes. In the forest, she was roughly 5 to 7 kilometers behind the Kyuubi. With a slight smile, he said to the Sandame, "Good luck with the paperwork, Oji.san. I might not make it out of this." The young man's words startled the old Hokage, and before he could react, the Yondaime disappeared in a burst of yellow light. Then Sandame prayed, "Kami Sama, help everyone out of this crisis," while gazing out the window. Around 7 kilometers from Konohagakure, as he watched her, Madara handed the Uzumaki to Orochimaru and set her down on the ground. He recognized her as a member of the Uzumaki clan after seeing her vivid red hair. Madara approached her and held the infant in her arms. The Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, Namikaze Minato, appeared in front of his wife and child, who were lying on the ground. As a flash of yellow light preceded the words, "Now hurry up, Orochimaru," before. With eyes that resembled the Shinigami's own, the Yondaime gave them a look. The sight of those blue eyes sent a shiver down Orochimaru's spine. Madara didn't even bat an eye at the glance. The Hokage asked, "Orochimaru, what do you want with my wife?" With that sickly twisted smile on his pasty pale face, Orochimaru said, "Oh, she is. You are a lucky bastard to have wooed the last Uzumaki, Minato.kun." A tiny snake that Orochimaru had conjured up from his back slithered stealthily down to his leg and onto the grassy ground. During those moments, the sound that was disturbing Uzumaki Kushina caused her to stir in her sleep. After learning of Orochimaru's plans, Madara prepared to battle the Yondaime. He made some hand signals so fast that Madara's Sharingan could not even see what he was doing, but the Yondaime had other ideas. He then proceeded to attack Orochimaru, who was astounded by the Yondaime's speed because even Sharingan users could not match it. In front of the Yondaime, a wall that resembled a barrier and had a spiral pattern emerged. He launches his special kunai at Orochimaru, who merely cocked his head to the left, causing the kunai to miss him and land precisely behind him. Mockingly, Orochimaru asked, "Is that the best you can do, Yondaime sama?" Orochimaru screamed as the jutsu slammed to his back and began to grind into his body, tearing his skin and muscles. The Yondaime then grinned because that was what he wanted the kunai to do and said, "Did you forget who I am, Teme?" Minato formed his famous technique in his right hand and disappeared in a flash of yellow. He then attacked Orochimaru from behind and pushed his technique into his back, shouting, "Rasengan." The Yondaime then drove Orochimaru directly to the wall that acted as a barrier, and it was carried to the edge of Hai no Kuni, which is close to Kaminari no Kuni's border. The Yondaime turned to Madara and said, "One down, one to go." Then he witnessed something that could haunt him forever. A tiny snake was coiled and ready to bite the child. However, a hand blocked its path just as it was ready to strike, so it bit the hand to save Naruto. After that, the hand killed the snake. When Kushina woke up, those hands belonged to her protective mother. Madara watched this with curiosity, wondering what the young Hokage would do. After grabbing his wife and child, Minato fled to his clan's house. Madara noticed that the Sandaime was with the Kyuubi as they finished the Konoha ninja. The Kyuubi is currently being attacked by Konoha ninja using ninjutsu, which has prevented it from moving forward but is insufficiently powerful to drive it back. "Hold your ground. We need to wait for the Yondaime Hokage sama," yelled the squad leaders. The Namikaze safe house Minato sobbed and said, "Kushina-chan, please stay with me. I will need you for what I am about to do. Minato-kun, I will be with you always, but now I want to stay with Naru-chan. You go get it over with," she said while weeping. After giving her another glance, Minato flashed to battle Madara. Naruto began to cry as Kushina rocked him and sang a lullaby. With Konoha and Kyuubi ninja in response to Madara's command to use its ultimate attack, the Kyuubi began gathering white and black chakra in front of its mouth, forming a massive black ball of chakra. According to the Sandaime, "Oh no. If we let that Kyuubi finish that attack, then it will destroy the entire village," he said alarmingly. A spiral-shaped barrier appeared, absorbed the attack, and saved the village as the Kyuubi fired the ball at it and it was about to slam to the Hokage monument. But behind the village, there was an explosion. Everyone yelled, "Yondaime sama," when they saw that. Minato-san must be near to perform his Jikukan ninjutsu. Shikaku of the Nara clan observed this and told Choza of the Akamichi clan. They then witnessed Namikaze Minato using his Shikikanai as a jutsu medium while standing atop the statue of himself. A figure then materialized behind Minato, silently attempting to seize the Yondaime. Minato took the Shikikanai in the opposite position. In an instant, he spun and stabbed his kunai through his attacker's skull, but the kunai simply went through him without feeling any blood or flesh. The Yondaime's hand sailed through the masked man, startling him. Then his hand moved to the opposite side of his head after passing through it. In an attempt to lead Minato somewhere, the masked man grabbed Minato's left arm and said, "You'll have to fight me, and it's over." His eye hole began to swirl, distorting space. Minato jumped and used the Hiroshin to get away thanks to his exceptional reflexes and speed. He jumped again. "I must immediately suck him in faster the instant I touch him," Madara thought to himself. The opposite side of Konoha in the training area where he used to instruct his team, Yondaime collapsed to the ground. Questions filled his mind. As he was about to stand up, he noticed the same distortions as before and Madara appeared. He was thinking, "He dodged my attack. Then he solidified and tried to suck me in. What the hell was that jutsu?" His words were, "I won't let you get away." Minato was debating, can he use Jikukan ninjutsu too? So that's how he was able to move Kushina so quickly. He was able to pass the Anbu under the Sandaime's direct control. That is not all, but he was able to tame and control the Kyuubi. And he was able to get through the barrier around Konoha. There is only one ninja I know. How could do all that? Minato asked, "You really are the Uchiha Madara?" Madara took off his hood to reveal an orange mask with one eye hole on the right side and black stripes running across it. Minato responded, "No, you cannot be. He is dead." "Well, who knows?" Madara said apathetically. Madara responded, "I guess you could say. It's both a whim. And a plan. To Minato's statement, at this point, it's not important who you are. But why are attacking Konoha? He then went on to say, it's for both war and for peace. As he began to reveal his sleeves and displayed a handcuff on both arms that were connected to one another by a long black chain. Either way, he is no ordinary ninja. He can control the Kyuubi and is better at Jikukan ninjutsu than I am or the Naidame. Combined with those dangerous ideologies, I have to put a stop to him here or he might unleash something even worse than the Kyuubi. Minato was stunned, but his mind was racing 100 kilometers per hour in an attempt to figure out this mysterious man. If I jump to the village, he will follow me and make the battlefield even more chaotic, but like Madara, his Kachiyose probably can't keep the Kyuubi here for long. I'll just have to trust the Sandaime to take care of the village. I have to stop this guy here, Minato thought as he prepared to face Madara, who was running over to him and yelling, there is no hope for you. Minato pulled out his shiki, marked kunai and held it in his left hand. The Yondaime then stabbed forward, but the kunai again went through him, passing through his hand and arm before completely passing through him. Minato hurled his kunai, and Madara pulled the chain he was carrying, causing it to pierce the earth a few meters away. Minato jumped and appeared close to the thrown kunai, crouching with his right hand in a half-ram hand sign, but Madara had him chained up as he turned to touch him. As he looked at Madara, Minato thought, but it's risky for him to attack, and with the Kyuubi's Kachiyose in mind, he probably wants to get this over with as soon as possible. And then he turned around and faced his enemy again. His body. My physical attacks don't work on him. He only solidifies when he is about to attack. In other words, I have to attack him when he attacks me. Snatching the ground. Trapped kunai he had used earlier, he charged in the direction of his opponent. Time seemed to slow down dramatically as he finally came to the conclusion, it's all down whose attack is a split second faster. The two men charged at each other again. Minato hurled his shiki, marked kunai in Madara's direction as they approached. He did, however, recoil when he saw the kunai approaching and aiming for his face. The majority of the kunai passed through Minato, who had the Rasengan ready in his right hand, and he slipped through with little change in speed. The kunai was nearly out behind Madara's head when they were only a few centimeters apart. Minato's left shoulder was nearly touched by Madara's right hand. Victory is mi, Minato said, thinking he had won, and then he leapt at the last second, hitting Madara with the technique while yelling, Rasengan. Similar to how he had previously treated Orochimaru, the Rasengan did his job by tearing and grinding at Madara's back before slamming him to the hard, cold ground. The Yondaime Hokage grabbed the kunai in midair as he said, that is the Hiroshin level 2. Madara was taken aback by the understatement and exclaimed, Shimada. He jumped to that kunai. The Rasengan explosions caused significant damage to Madara and the surrounding area as he hit the ground, but Hiroshin Shiki then left a mark on Madara's back. Madara performed a backflip and grabbed his left arm as he landed. He was bleeding excessively from damage to his left arm and back. Then Minato immediately stabbed Madara in the chest. Hiroshin no Jutsu. I see. He must have placed some sort of marking on me, was the first thought that came to Madara. A Keiyaku Fuin, are you trying to break my contract with the Kyuubi? Exclaimed Madara as Minato placed his hand on his torso. Now the Kyuubi will no longer be yours to control, Madara responded, no wonder you're the Yondaime Hokage. I am impressed you were able to wound me and wrestle the Kyuubi from me. As he said, those distortions appeared around him, but the Kyuubi will be mine once again. I am the ruler of this world. I have many means in my disposal. Minato disappeared in the same manner he had appeared. That feeling. He's not lying, Minato thought to himself. On the battlefield of Kyuubi, the Kyuubi's eyes began to change from its typical appearance to that of Uchiha Sharingan before eventually taking on the characteristics of its own Kitsune eye, which was blood red with a black slit in the center. The Kyuubi then jumped back out of the village after emerging from the hypnotic trance that Uchiha Madara's Sharingan had created. When Sandaime noticed this, he yelled, we got it out of the village, continue with the attack, while he was with his former teammates Mitokado Homura and Udatane Kaharu, who were dressed as Sarutobi. Hold it off until the Yondaime gets here, yelled the Konoha ninja squad leaders. Minato used the Hiroshin and leapt to the top of his statue to reach the Hokage monument. Startled, he thought, this is terrible, and began using hand signals to create a cage bunshin. He then gave it instructions to go to Kushina-chan and get her to the safe house at the back of Konoha. When he noticed that the Kyuubi had resumed its ultimate attack, he performed another set of hand signals. Oh, are you going to try that again? Asked Sandaime, and Kachiyose no Jutsu, Yatai Kuzushi no Jutsu, was yelled by the Yondaime. The toad boss Gamabunta fell on the Kyuubi, pinning it while its mouth still held that black ball of concentrated chakra, pointing in the direction of the Sandaime and Konoha. "It's the Yondaime!" yelled a random Konoha ninja. Remembering Madara's words, Minato thought, Kushina. "I'm sorry." The Yondaime then yelled at Gamabunta, "Hold the Kyuubi for a little while." Gamabunta retorted, "Even I can't hold him back for long. I'll need lots of chakra to send something this big," Minato exclaimed, and then the Kyuubi abruptly disappeared, and Gamabunta fell to the ground. After asking himself, Minato, where did he send the Kyuubi? Sarutobi exclaimed, "Over there," after spotting a flash and a mushroom cloud a few kilometers away. The safe house of Minato. Although Kyuubi's attack destroyed the house, Minato was almost chakra depleted but suffered no physical harm. He was panting and exclaimed, "I have to get the barrier as soon as possible." Using the Hiroshin, the clone showed up in front of the original along with his spouse and child. While they were hiding from the Kyuubi, Minato took her and his child and let the clone go. "My chakra is almost gone," Kushina said weakly as the poison was killing her. Minato-kun, I can still fight. From her back to the Kyuubi, she released spiked chains composed of her chakra. As his dying wife chained and secured the Kyuubi, Minato watched in horror. When baby Naruto woke up and began to cry, Minato was holding him. After coughing up blood, Kushina said, "I guess we woke him up. Sorry, Naruto." Minato was stunned, but she said, "Kushina." Then she said, "I'm going to draw the Kyuubi in. Moreover, it will kill me. That way I can put off the Kyuubi being used to destroy again. That's the only way the last of my chakra can be of assistance to you." She grinned and said, "Thank you for everything." As he stared at her, Minato was stunned but unable to speak, and most importantly, when I think about what our life would be like together if I lived, I can only picture happiness, she said. Minato was sobbing when she began, but now his eyes were watering and a tear of sadness fell, almost causing him to cry. But after wiping away the tears from his eyes, Minato added, "There's one thing I regret. It is I would get to see Naruto grow up." Kushina went on. "Kushina, there is no need for you to die with the Kyuubi. Use the remaining chakra so you can be with Naruto forever." The sole intelligent response Kushina gave her husband was, "Huh. I will seal your remaining chakra along with your soul and mine into Naruto so you and I can be with him as he grows up, and seal the half of Kyuubi in Naruto using the Hake Fuin and the other half in my soul." "But how are you going to do that? Oh no, do not tell me you will use the Shikifujin." "But with that seal you'll..." "One more thing, I need to divide the Kyuubi since it is impossible and is not strategically feasible either to seal him fully. Nevertheless, if you died with the Kyuubi, then the Kyuubi will come back and will throw off the Biju balance. If the Kyuubi is left without a Jinchuriki, it will be used again." Jiraiya Sensei once told about a prophecy, and he thought that I'm the one that will bring a revolution in the ninja world. But I think it's Naruto will be that savior, so I will seal the young half of the Kyuubi in Naruto. Kushina was shocked to learn that her son was a nevertheless. Minato responded, "I know what you will say, but you know about the revolution that Jiraiya Sensei was talking about. There was also catastrophes that will come." Sandaime ran to see what Minato was doing after he looked into Kushina's eyes and said, "Today I realized two things. The masked man who attacked you, and I fought. He will bring catastrophe upon us. Moreover, this child is the one who will stop him. As the host, he will clear the way for the future. For some reason, I just know. Minato." "But," Kushina said, but she stopped when her husband made a cage bunshin and began a series of well-known hand signals. The clone Minato began chanting, snake, boar, ram, rabbit, dog, rat, bird, horse, and snake. When he was done, he clapped his hands and exclaimed, "Shikifujin." The clone Minato told Kushina, "Have faith in this child. After all, he is our son." Following that ghostly creature with a demonic face, a knife in its mouth, a demonic face, black eyes with golden pupils, red horns, and white long shaggy hair, it was dressed in white Shinto priest robes and had prayer beads tied around its left wrist. The Shinigami symbolized holding Minato's soul by holding a human-shaped chakra by its hair. The original Minato told Kushina, "Kihaku Fuin no Jutsu is a kinjutsu that I created to remove any human souls and seal them in without the need to invoke the Shinigami. Are you ready? Because the only way to do that is for the Shinigami to take our lives when I use this new sealing jutsu along with Shikifujin, and I called Kihaku Fuin no Jutsu. However, I must complete it before my clone completes sealing the Kyuubi." The clone had already begun sealing. He began by directing the Shinigami's protruding hand toward the clone's abdomen. The Kyuubi was grasped by the Shinigami's extended hand. "I don't want our son to have such a heavy burden alone," Kushina replied. Minato's clone finished as the Shinigami's hand pulled half of Kyuubi, the Yin chakra, and yelled, "Fuin." The clone felt very heavy because the chakra was so large, but Minato responded, "Don't worry, you and I will be with him and me inside waiting for him to make contact and then we will help him." The clone arrived, shouted, "Hake Fuin," and began sealing the Yang chakra of the Kyuubi in Naruto after the original Minato called forth the Jinchuriki ceremonial cradle with candles and a stand and placed Naruto inside. As he shrank in size due to Hake Fuin Minato, the Kyuubi realized they were attempting to seal him in that newborn attack. Kushina stopped the Kyuubi from hurting their child by blocking the path of his claw as it passed through them, and the tip came very close to Naruto. Kyuubi cursed both of them as they laughed, blood in their mouths, at the fox's insistence on trying to get away. At the same moment that the clone completed the ritual, the original performed 8 hand signals and exclaimed, "Kihaku Fuin no Jutsu." His and Kushina's chakra and souls left their bodies and entered the seal on Naruto's stomach with the Kyuubi's other half. When the clone saw the Sandaime, it informed him that Minato and Kushina had made Naruto a hero by sealing in the Kyuubi. As clone Minato put it, "Good luck with the paperwork, old man." After having a sickly appearance, the clone scattered in a pool of smoke. The Yondaime and his wife's lives for the defense of their village had already ended, as had the Kyuubi. In Sandaime's opinion, this was the worst night of his life. He was nevertheless honored to have known a couple as strong and devoted to Konoha as they were. When the Anbu and the other ninja arrived to find out what had happened to their cage, the Sandaime made a couple of cage bunshin. In order to prepare for future issues, Sandaime ordered the ninjas to return to the village after witnessing his anguished face as he and his clones did something. He gave the cage bunshin the order to transport Naruto and the bodies to the hospital. After visiting the hospital, the Sandaime created 3 new death certificates and a new birth certificate. The death certificate was for the Namikaze family, whom he claimed were dead due to the Kyuubi, and the birth certificate was for a certain Uzumaki Naruto. When he stopped the Kyuubi, Minato died, and Kushina, his wife, died while giving birth to their son, who also died with her. It was, in fact, a very depressing day. October 17th, 1 week later the village mourned the dead for a week. The time was early in the morning. After that, everything returned to normal, but too quickly, as the village needed to rebuild and regain what we had lost. The village needed a Hokage until someone of Minato's caliber could be found, so he was compelled to return as Hokage. The village must also demonstrate that they were unaffected in any way by the Kyuubi's attack. There's another issue that keeps bothering him. Uzumaki Naruto was the issue, and only he and his former Ninja Council colleagues, who are in competition with Shimura Danzo for the Hokage position, were aware of him. Udatane Kaharu and Mitokado Homura, 2 of his teammates, questioned him about his plans for the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. At their house on the Sarutobi clan estate, his wife Bawako was caring for the infant. Danzo instructed Sarutobi to transform the child into a weapon in order to control and defend the village. Sarutobi, however, declined since he did not want the son of Minato and Kushina to be used as a weapon in light of their sacrifice for the village. Then Sarutobi at last said, "Listen, I have to tell the villagers about Naruto condition and Minato wish. I can't tell them about him being Minato's and Kushina's child because I have to protect him from Minato's enemies both inside and outside the village. And I mustn't let the Namikaze Keke Genkai fall in the hands of anyone but Naruto when he grows up," believed the Sandaime Hokage. "I don't know why Sarutobi is bothering with thing, but I must add it to my name," thought Danzo. Danzo appeared to be unaffected, but he was shouting in his head when Sarutobi revealed to them, "I will take care of Naruto until he is ready for the Ninja Academy at the age of 8 years old." Danzo thought, "Why? What do I have to do to get that damn kid in Nei?" After giving them a quick glance, Danzo said calmly, "If there is nothing else, I will be taking my leave." The Sandaime Hokage who stood there already knew that Danzo was his plan, but he did nothing and walked away without saying anything. Sarutobi laughed inwardly as he looked at Danzo with a serious expression and said, "Danzo, stay away from this child as for him to have a normal childhood. I have a painfully annoying job of telling the villagers that the Kyuubi didn't get killed but sealed. Oh, this is, as Nara Shikaku puts it, troublesome." The evening at the Sarutobi clan estate. After a long day, the Sandaime returned home in the evening to his clan's house. When he explained to the civilians that the Kyuubi could not be killed but was sealed in a newborn child named Uzumaki Naruto, the villagers all panicked because they believed the child had died because the Kyuubi had reincarnated as a human. The majority of the populace was not persuaded when the Sandaime told them about Minato, the Yondaime's desire to make this child a hero for rescuing the village. But only a small percentage were persuaded, because they were aware of the Yondaime's Fuinjutsu skill. The child is a hero. However, he created a law that forbids discussing the Kyuubi and what happened to the younger generation, punishable by death, because he thought that the civilians might cause Naruto problems. This allowed Naruto to live a somewhat normal life. His wife was waiting for him in the hallway when he opened the door to his house. They will eventually find out, but it's better if I tell them so that I can make a law from anyone telling him about the Kyuubi, she said, giving him a curious look. It will never be easy for Naruto, so the Sandaime signed heavily. I hope you know what you are doing, Koichi. Noting that he had shut the door of his house, Sandaime pondered, maybe I can train Naruto so that when he is ready to live as a ninja if he wants it, that is. Little did he know that a legend about this child was about to begin. After 5 years, after the Kyuubi incident, Konohagakure no Sato had improved, and the damage from that night has since disappeared. However, some wounds are too deep to heal in that short a period of time. As a result, we catch a glimpse of something yellow scuttling through the streets of Konoha. Upon closer inspection, we spot a young boy who appears to be around 4 or 5 years old. His eyes are bright blue, his hair is sunshine blonde, and each cheek has 3 whisker-like markings. His canines were larger than usual, and his smile was fox-like. He was dressed in black shorts, tiny blue ninja sandals, and a white shirt with an orange spiral with the end pointing up. I hope Oji-chan is in his office. Naruto exclaimed excitedly to no one in particular as he ran toward the Hokage tower to meet a specific old man. Despite his outwardly cheerful demeanor, Naruto was a deeply troubled youngster. He wore the mask to demonstrate his strength of character and to shield himself from the villagers. However, all he received were whispers, disdain, and a hateful glare. He was aware, however, that he had people who spoke to him and smiled. He aspires to strength and was aware that the Hokage was the strongest ninja. Therefore, he thought, even if the villagers hate me for no reason, I have to love and protect them since I am going to be Hokage. I am going to protect the ones I love, while he was admiring the Hokage monument. Tower of Hokage. In a way, the Sandaime Hokage was engaged in combat with paperwork, the cage's worst enemy and curse. What would I do for some detraction right now? He asked himself. Then, as though to fulfill his wish, a young boy with blue eyes and blonde hair burst through the door. He laughed to himself, well, this is what I get to wish out of work. Ha 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 ha. The wise Hokage asked, Ohio Naruto-kun. What have I told you about doors? It is all right for now. Please remember to knock the door, Naruto, and ask permission first before you enter anyone's room, the old Hokage said, ruffling the child's hair. Naruto appeared embarrassed and said, Gomen Oji-chan. I was very happy and I didn't see you leave home today. Naruto gave the Hokage a joyful smile as he glanced up at him. As he awaited Naruto's response, the elderly man said, Hey Naruto-kun, how about a bowl of your favorite dish? Naruto jumped a little and pumped his fist in the air because he was so happy. No Naruto. Thank you for getting me out of this damned paperwork. The Sandaime grinned as Naruto exclaimed, Thanks Oji-chan. I love you. As they approached the door, Naruto joyfully walked in front of him. The Sandaime turned to face a woman seated in an office as they walked out the door. The Sandaime gave his secretary the order, I going now have all my appointments rescheduled for tomorrow, okay? After glaring at the Hokage, she turned to face Naruto, who was flinching behind the old Hokage. The secretary was startled when the Sandaime coughed in his fist. After giving the Hokage a quick glance, she said, Hi Hokage. Sama. The elderly Hokage shook his head and left with young Naruto. When Naruto turned around, the secretary was staring at him once more before rushing back to the Sandaime. Naruto and the Hokage were strolling through Konoha's streets, on their way to Ichiraku Ramen, Naruto's favorite restaurant. As Naruto chanted, Ramen, Ramen, Ramen Datbayo. The Sandaime laughed at his antics, which made him think of Kushina, Naruto's mother when she was a child. He let out a sigh and turned to watch Naruto race toward Ichiraku's stand. He laughed and shook his head as he trailed the energetic little blonde. However, he noticed while strolling that the villagers were glaring at the young child with hatred and disdain, and their expressions changed as they bowed and grinned at the Hokage as he approached. He exhaled and thought to himself, Poor Naruto. He will take him a long time to gain the trust of the villagers and he did nothing that showed them that he was evil. But the people think he is the Kyuubi in human form. Ramen Ichiraku Tuchi and his daughter Ayame entered Ichiraku. Ayame said, Hey Naruto-chan, how are you today? And her father asked, What will you be having Naruto? Is it the usual? Naruto responded, No Ji-chan, I have someone with me so it's his treat. Tuchi's eyebrows shot up as he was about to ask the boy, Well then Naruto, who is going to treat you? Then someone came in, looked up from Naruto to see who their new customer was, and said, not many people will even look, but treat him to ramen. Only to discover that Sandaime Hokage was the one. Welcome to our humble stand, Hokage. Sama. It's an honor to have you here, Hokage. Sama. They both said, bowing and grinning at their cage. Sandaime gave them a critical glance before grinning. The fact that Tucci and his daughter Ayame bowed and said, we apologize, Hoka. Sarutobi. Sama fascinated Naruto. He said, I am happy to be here, but if you treat me differently because of who I am, then I won't be. I am not your Hokage but any ordinary customer, so call me Sarutobi.san. Naruto looked at the elderly man with a fresh perspective and asked himself, what's wrong with them? Are they scared of OG? Chan. The Sandaime said, okay Naruto, what kind of ramen do you want? The Hokage remarked, I will be having the same as Naruto's, while Naruto stated, I will start with chicken ramen then with rest G.san knows. They sat down on the chairs and waited for their order. Sandaime was thinking. He said, start, oh what have I got myself into? I forgot that Naruto ate like an Akamichi. Oh well, he got me out of my office, so this is his reward. Some patrons began to arrive as they were beginning to eat, but they glared at Naruto and failed to notice the Hokage present. As they turned to face the Hokage, they discover a heavy presence in the stand and come face to face with him. When the Hokage saw that with his icy eyes, they were terrified and fled right away. I apologize, Tucci.san, but I had to scare them off, the Hokage said with a sigh to the owner of the ramen stand. As you can see, Naruto. Chan is our first loyal customer ever since we opened shop here. For 6 months now, Naruto. Chan is coming to our ramen shop. Tucci nodded in agreement and said, no problem here, Sarutobi. Sama. Naruto then finished 5 bowls in total and had an oversized potbelly. Then, as he got up to play in the park, he said, oh that was so good. Thanks OG. Chan for the treat. Thanks UG.san, Ayame. Ni-chan. The Hokage waited for Naruto to disappear from view. Listen to me both of you. You both know that Naruto is a very special boy and he does even have a clue as to why. So if you are helping him so that you can harm him later, beware because I will make your life a living hell, understood? He said, turning to face the elderly ramen maker and his daughter. The Sandaime Hokage expressed his satisfaction with the Ichiraku pair by saying, thanks Kami. Sama and Naruto's good heart, he will find a way to get good friends. Hoka. Sarutobi. Sama, we already know about the incident, and Naruto. So, don't worry, we know that this Naruto and not who we do not speak of. Naruto is a good kid, so why would we harm him in any way? In the park, Naruto was heading to a park. Then he began to run fast. He was running at Genin level speeds when he came to a clearing in the park's forest while following a secret path. The villagers were glaring at him and whispering something about some demon, but he was not listening because he was thinking, who am I going to meet and be friends with? There were 3 boys and a girl, all about his age, that he saw. As he approached, he noticed that the 3 boys were bullying the young girl instead of playing with her. As he grabbed her head, one of them said, beg for forgiveness from us. Come on, now hurry up. Before pushing her to the ground to plead, oh guys. Look what we have here. She is one of those white-eyed bastards who think themselves are the rulers of the village. She was crying because of what Naruto had witnessed. I am sore. Was the first thing she began to whisper, but Naruto had had enough. Naruto became very irate because he could not accept that a girl would be beaten without cause. She was crying because of them. Naruto landed in front of the girl after jumping out. His sudden appearance frightened the boys. They then began whispering, that's the boy mom told me not to get close to. Yeah, that's him, let's get away from here. They turned to face Naruto, who appeared to be very irate and had slits in his eyes, giving him a feline appearance. What did she do to make her cry like this, Datbeo? Naruto yelled as he turned to face them. The boys began to flee from Naruto. Just as Naruto was ready to pursue, he recalled his anger. The girl looked at Naruto, and he turned to face her. Hey, sorry about those jerks. By the way, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. What is yours? He said. Naruto turned to see that she had snow white, pale skin, blue short hair with bangs to the side of her face, and white, lavender eyes. She looked at her savior and blushed. He had the bluest eyes she had ever seen and blonde hair that matched the sun's color. Then she saw that his cheeks were marked like whiskers. Hin. Hinata, Hyu. Hyuga Hinata is my name. She blushed and stammered out, Hin. Hinata, Hyu. Hyuga Hinata is my name. Naruto was grinning because he didn't get much attention and was glad to have a new friend. He looked at her and offered to help her up, saying, "Okay, are you alright, Hinata?" He helped her off the ground after she looked down and took his hand. He then heard, "Ah, arigato Naruto-kun." In addition, he responded, "No problem Hinata." Naruto and Hinata then heard someone shout, "Hinata! Sama! Hinata! Sama! Where are you?" As a young member of the Hyuga clan approached them and exclaimed, "Oh, there you are Hinata! Sama? I was looking for you everywhere." He scowled as he approached the kids and noticed the blonde individual. "Let's go, Hinata. Sama," he said, grabbing Hinata's left hand and pulling her. She glanced at him, then at Naruto, who had a dejected expression. But she didn't understand. Naruto returned her wave with her right hand. As they emerged from the forest, she turned to see Naruto walking into the park, looking dejected. Naruto saw his friends as he was leaving for the park. He became joyful and content. They began playing together after he approached them. There were roughly a dozen children present. Along with other kids, Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji, and Inazuka Kiba were Naruto's favorite pals. Up until the evening, when parents began to take their kids home, they played together. Naruto would gaze at the kids with a sad expression on his face while their parents were taking them. He began to walk home with the sadness brought on by his loneliness, remembering why he had never been alone. In a cheerful tone, he began to run home after saying, "I have OG-chan, Oba-san, G-san, and Ayame. Ni-chan. There are also women with long red hair and the man with the same hair as mine that I always see whenever I dream." Then he began to consider, maybe they are both my parents because I am an orphan. He shook his head and uttered, "I wish." Clan Estate Sarutobi and his spouse were discussing a certain blonde boy they both adore. Bawako stopped joking and telling stories about Naruto and turned to face her husband when Sarutobi abruptly became serious and said, "Bawako-chan, I must talk to you about Naruto and his future." Sarutobi began by stating, "I have to start Naruto training in order for him to control his powers as early as possible. Since he is the son of the Yondaime Namikaze Minato and his wife Uzumaki Kushina, he will develop a unique style of fight and ninjutsu. Also, since both Minato and Kushina are sealed, he might or will meet them soon and learn from them, so we should prepare him for them because that is the least we can do for him." Bawako concurred and said, "So when are you going to start training him, dear?" "I will start training him tomorrow because he is the last Namikaze and Uzumaki in Konoha, and his parents will take care of the rest when he is old enough." They both left the compound door open and remained silent while they awaited the young boy. The house removed Naruto's shoes and put them back where they belonged as he walked in. He entered the house with the intention of speaking with the elderly Hokage. They were waiting for him, sitting in the living room. Upon entering, he said, "Good evening." His voice was sad, though. Observing Naruto's sadness, the Hokage said, "Good evening to you, Naruto-kun," but he remained silent. Bawako said, "Good evening Naruto-chan," recognizing Naruto's peculiar behavior as well. When Naruto realized he was in front of a powerful man, he exclaimed, "Hi. What is it you want to talk about OG-san?" Sarutobi was pleased to see Naruto had recognized the significance of what he had to say. The Hokage then said, "I have to speak to you about something very important Naruto." They had to speak like men, so Bawako laughed in her head when Sarutobi turned to face his wife and asked, "Dear, is it okay if I had a moment with Naruto alone?" She went to the kitchen after saying, "Okay dear. Naruto-chan, I will fix us a very good dinner after you two finish." Naruto sat on a chair and waited for the Hokage to begin, staring into his aged eyes. "Naruto, it's about time I start to train you in how to be a shinobi. You do want to be a ninja, right?" the Hokage said. Naruto first leapt with joy, then turned to face the elderly man as though he had grown a second head. "Give me all you got, OG-chan," Naruto said with unwavering resolve. "I have never ever wanted to be anything else, OG-san." The Sandame saw Naruto's face and said, "Good, since from now onwards you will call me sensei when I am training you, and I am not going easy on you, okay?" The Sandame went on to say, "I might not train you always since I have a job to protect this village we all love, and don't tell anyone about our training. You must use what I will teach you for protecting the village. Understand Naruto-kun?" "Hi," said Naruto with a nod. Naruto nodded and went to the kitchen, saying, "Good, now go eat your dinner since you will need all the energy for tomorrow. I know he will be very powerful in the future, but I have to let him enter the academy soon," the Sandame remarked as he cheerfully made his way to the kitchen to see Naruto. The following morning around 4:59 in the morning, the Sandame arose and prepared to begin a new day. The Sandaime recalled his training schedule from the previous evening. He proceeded to Naruto's room, went inside, and roused Naruto. Sandaime asked, "Did you forget about the training?" Naruto yawned and asked, "Oh gee. Chan, what is the matter?" The drowsy boy then asked, "Oh, what training, oh gee. Chan? Don't you want to be Hokage and take my hat?" Sandaime asked with a smile, and then he was suddenly ready when he saw the Hokage grinning at him. He scratched the back of his head and said, "Sorry, I forgot about the training, sensei." "Naruto, get out of bed, wash up, and wear these clothes," the Sandaime said, gesturing to some cloth on the study table in Naruto's room. His face changed to that of a strict teacher, and come down to the compound's training ground in 10 minutes max. Naruto met his serious expression. When Naruto turned to face the Hokage after getting out of bed, he was gone. "How is the training going to be like? I hope I learned something cool." Naruto then began to wash his face and brush his teeth before cleaning his mouth. He exited the restroom and proceeded to the desk containing the clothing that his sensei had given him. It was a black pair of training shorts and a white gi. He said, "Man, this is so cool," as he wore it, and I was ecstatic. He rushed out of his room when his grandmother called him for breakfast. He ate it more quickly than normal and rushed to the door. "Naruto. Chan, haven't you forgotten something?" his grandmother asked. Naruto halted and hurried back to her. Then he pushed her back and said, "Got to go to train Oba-san." He waved at her before leaving to head to the training ground. "I am sorry, Oba-san. I love you and thank you for the breakfast." Training ground for Sarutobi in full battle gear, the Sandaime Hokage was waiting in the training area. He began to consider the young man. "I think, I will train him for a year, then when he is ready I place him in the academy, and if everything goes well he will have friends and he will never hate the village. But I have to know who he is so that I don't make the same mistake as in Orochimaru again. I know that he will have a knack for ninjutsu and fuinjutsu and jikukan ninjutsu." Naruto arrived on time, running in about 6 or 7 minutes. As he imagined a prepared Naruto, the Sandaime was giggling. With a grin that made Naruto shudder, Naruto approached his sensei and said, "I ready sensei for your training." "Okay, Naruto. Let the training begin. Your physical training must come first, followed by your mental training, so you should read books to control your chakras, and then your ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu." The Hokage's voice was that of a teacher. Naruto appeared to be joking, but his sensei was serious when he added, "First do 100 push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, log kicks and log punches, and in the end you will run about 5 kilometers. After that, he began the training, and the Sandaime said, "Come to my office when you're done, and I'll start teaching you how to control your mind and chakras." Naruto nodded, started the training, and the Sandaime departed for his job in the tower. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because of his training and the heat from the sun, Naruto was perspiring a lot. As he had previously stated, the Sandaime was waiting in his office when he finished. After Naruto finished the training, Sandaime was pleased with him, but he didn't display it. Naruto sulked but accepted the scrolls and sat on the ground when he said, "Okay Naruto, and now I have to tell you about ninja history and the theories on chakra use, ninjutsu, and genjutsu." He began reading the scroll about the Rikudo Sennin as he unfolded it. After finishing that scroll, he opened the next one, the Shinobi Rules and Ideals. After reading the first page, he asked his sensei, "Sensei, what does deception mean?" It stated, "Deception is a ninja's best ally." "That's a good question, Naruto. Deception is the art of hiding the truth. You hide everything about yourself and show nothing to your opponent so you can have the element of surprise. In the ninja world, the unknown is a very dangerous variable." "Oh, I get it now, thanks sensei," said Naruto as he reflected. "That means that I have to hide what I have learned from my sensei and not show anything of interest to other ninjas so I can have the upper hand and defeat them easily." The Hokage instructed him to halt and resume later after a few hours had passed. He told Naruto, "Now I have to teach you how to mold chakra. Naruto chakra created by mixing both spiritual and physical energy. Spiritual energy is the created by experience and knowledge, while physical energy is the energy you get from cells in your body and through training. When you blend them perfectly you get chakra and you can use it in ninjutsu, genjutsu or taijutsu. For example, I will show you a jutsu when we get outside." "Okay." In the training ground for Sarutobi, the Hokage told his newest pupil, "I am going to show you a generally known jutsu famous to the Uchiha clan. Kaden Gukaku no Jutsu," was yelled by the Hokage as he began to perform hand signs and finished by saying, "Horse, tiger." His lungs inflated almost unnaturally, and he then blew out a giant sized ball of fire, which he continued to blow for 5 minutes. A burned crater and a lot of hot air were left behind when he stopped exhaling and the ball of fire vanished. When Naruto saw and marveled at the fire jutsu, he had stars in his eyes. In order to influence his sensei to teach him that jutsu, Naruto pouted sweetly with his enormous puppy eyes when his sensei said, "You are not to start in ninjutsu until I think you are ready. I showed you this so that you may understand how to create and use chakra for ninjutsu and etc. No, I will not teach you this jutsu until you are ready and you have done the training perfectly. So now start to gather chakra and show it to me," the Hokage said, looking at Naruto without showing any signs of emotion. "Hi," he exclaimed as he saluted his sensei. Naruto was thinking, "I am going to do my best in training and I will learn that jutsu by myself so I can prove I am a good ninja, sensei." In order to focus, Naruto first put his hand inside the ram hand seal. It took the shape of a thin veil and flashed blue energy around Naruto. As he pushed himself further, it thickened and spiraled around him. The Hokage, meanwhile, was stunned by the silence and his jaw hung open in shock at what he saw. He then yelled for Naruto to stop, but when he did, he passed out from chakra exhaustion. "I thought he would gather at least genin level chakra, but this is impressive. I think the ceiling of the Kyuubi has increased his chakra potent capacity. I think he is best suited for high chakra consumption jutsu." After picking up the young boy, the Hokage turned back to the house and took Naruto in on his back, saying, "You have impressed me today, Naruto. I will make you the one of the best ninja in the world, if not the best." Sarutobi Clan Estate, 4:59 a.m., 2 weeks later. For the past 2 weeks, Naruto has woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning as usual. Wearing a stupid looking pajama, he was yawning and scratching his butt when he got out and went to the sink. He began his morning routine of brushing his teeth and washing his face. After finishing, he went downstairs after donning the training clothes that his sensei had given him. Bawako was up and about to start preparing breakfast when he noticed her favorite blonde coming downstairs. She replied, "Oh, good morning, Naruto. Chan, was your sleep last night? And how about you get some breakfast?" "Gomen, Oba-san, I have to train first, then I get to eat breakfast." "Oh, is that so? Even if it's your favorite dish? Even ramen, I don't believe it." She pouted at him. Naruto was pleased, but he tried to be cool because he knew that displaying emotion was against the ninja code. "Gomen, Oba-san, but OG. Chan told me to finish the physical training then have breakfast. Therefore, I have to go now. See you later." Naruto threw himself at the door before his Oba-san could contain him any longer, but he failed miserably. She said, "Oh, you poor thing. Hiruzen-kun is torturing you." Ha 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 ha, while laughing as she glanced at him. Ground for training of the Sarutobi clan as usual, Sarutobi was waiting for his pupil in the same location. Then, in front of him, he saw him sprint to his usual location. Naruto nodded and began his warm-up so he could begin the physical training. Naruto now do the usual training except increase the number to 550 sets of all and run around Konoha 10 times. As he stretched, he noticed that his sensei was thinking deeply. "Do I start teaching ninjutsu or taijutsu first? No, I will teach taijutsu and I had to show him some one fights a little bit later. Maybe when he finishes I will show him the fights between Kakashi and Guy since both are of the elite ninja in the whole village." He halted his train of thought as he saw Naruto finish the physical training, leaving only the jog to go. "When I finish I'll be back for the rest of the training in about an hour, sensei. I promise you, Dadbeo." Naruto gave his sensei a wave before leaving the Hokage in the training area to begin jogging. Energized blondes. The Hokage shook his head and muttered something about Mito Guy's second appearance. An hour later when Naruto returned, he was grinning and had kept his word to his sensei. The Hokage was pleased that Naruto possessed his father's tenacity and his mother's promise trait. After recalling old memories, the Hokage said, "I think they may be sealed inside along with the Kyuubi or that his is an exact copy of both of them. Minato and Kushina would have been so proud of you, Naruto." "Okay, Naruto. Follow me to my office in the tower." He then disappeared using a Shunshin no Jutsu, leaving behind a puff of smoke and leaves. Naruto began to sprint in the direction of the Hokage Tower. Tower of Hokage, he recalled having a scroll that belonged to both the Kushina and Minato clans while he waited. The Sandaime are among the few who are aware that Uzumaki Kushina was the last member of the Uzumaki clan in Konohagakure, and Namikaze Minato was the last member of the Senko clan. As the prodigy of the two nearly extinct clans, he is now treated like a plague victim. 10 minutes later, someone knocked on the door. Naruto was patting when the Hokage gave the order to enter. Naruto entered the room after the Hokage nodded. He saw the images of the past Hokages as he walked in, and the current Hokage waved for him to approach. I think he wants me to focus on their taijutsu to maybe create my own taijutsu style, Naruto thought as the fight broke out. Naruto obeyed, approached, and saw a crystal ball. The Hokage then told him, Naruto, I will show you a fight between two of our elite ninjas. You know them both actually. They're Hitaki Kakashi and his rival Mito Guy. They're about to fight, so look and see if you can get how ninjas fight. Training Ground 1 in Konoha A19. Old man named Mito Guy, who is a taijutsu specialist, was seen wearing a green spandex suit with a jonin vest unzipped. He had a bowl haircut, very thick eyebrows, and white, extremely shiny teeth. Then a pool of smoke appeared, and a young man who was even stranger than the first appeared. Hitaki Kakashi was a tall young man, dressed in the traditional dark blue Konoha ninja uniform, with his hands in his pockets and the jonin vest zipped up. What was strange about him was that, aside from his right eye and a small portion of his right cheek, his face was covered by a face mask that stretched from his nose to his neck, and his silver hair defied gravity. The two men were completely different from one another. Just before the fight, Guy yelled, My eternal rival, this is a taijutsu fight, nothing else. Show me your youth, please. Although Guy was the strongest taijutsu specialist and the elite ninjutsu specialist, Kakashi had dreaded his announcement because he knew that he might be on par with Guy in taijutsu. As a result, Guy now had the upper hand in the spar, but he told Guy, okay, but when I want I will use weapons but still no ninjutsu. Is that okay? While Guy assumed his Goken style stance, Kakashi thought, this is very annoying, but it will keep him away from me for at least another week. Kakashi had his right arm and hand lower as if he had held a kunai, while Guy stood tall with his left hand and arm behind his back and his right arm and hand protruding in front to protect his face. When this kunai, Kakashi began, but Guy interrupted him, saying, We begin as always, my eternal rival. Youth's explosion begins. Time seemed to have slowed down for the two fighters as the kunai crept towards the ground after Kakashi threw it vertically until it reached a certain height and then began to descend, with both of them prepared to leap and begin the fight. The kunai finally lodged to the ground, and both ninjas disappeared. At first, you only saw blurs of speed, but you could hear the sound of fists pounding flesh. Then, Naruto focused and he saw them fight, standing there silently in a deadlock tie, amazed by their speed and power. Kakashi attempted to punch Guy in the gut, but he hit air instead. Kakashi was thinking, Guy, you taijutsu using freak. When he looked to avoid a high kick from Guy, who was in his blind spot. Since he uses the Goken style, I can't let him hit me with those punches because he would easily break my bones. It appears that I will actually be using the Sharingan. While fighting, Guy was ecstatic when he noticed that Kakashi had left a gap in his defense, and that Guy only needed a tiny gap to break through, so he used all of his strength to do just that. Kakashi then looked at Guy, exposed the Sharingan eye beneath his headband, and saw through Guy's attack, giving him an uppercut that sent him flying. Guy was a little stunned because he had not anticipated the uppercut, but Kakashi did not even give him a chance to regain his senses before continuing the attack. Kakashi was punching Guy in the lower ribs, kidneys, and gut because those were the most painful places to be struck. But Guy blocked most of the blows and was about to counterattack when Kakashi destroyed him with a devastating roundhouse kick. When Guy was about to knock Kakashi's head off his shoulders, he ducked and was about to counterattack, but Guy blocked the blow. Their fight was intense, as our viewers witnessed, and Kakashi and Guy separated and jumped back of each other. Guy used his speed rather than ninjutsu to disappear and reappear behind Kakashi. Now we use weapons, Guy, said Kakashi, pulled out a kunai and assumed his previous stance, and Guy struck the nice Guy pose before yelling, Alright, my cool rival, let's use weapons now. Let our youthful fires burn brightly. As he pulled out a pair of nunchaku and placed them behind his left shoulder, they exchanged glances, Kakashi sporting a lazy expression and Guy sporting a competitive one. Each of them was yelling, 3, 2, 1, go. Guy pushed Kakashi away from him, began to do some tricks with his nunchaku, and ended by yelling a battle scream. And they vanished again, but clashed with their weapons in the middle of the makeshift arena. Then they did it again, and all you hear is a clang sound made from their weapons clash. They clashed again, this time with sparks flying. He then rushed toward Kakashi and swung his nunchaku at him. Using his Sharingan eye, Kakashi was able to anticipate the movement of the sticks as they were about to strike him, and he easily avoided them while he was considering how to counter Guy's nunchaku. Guy became extremely irritated because he had the upper hand, so he thought, I must defeat him, but how can I accomplish that? He avoids my attacks with the aid of his Sharingan. After an additional hour of fighting, they were tied. Both fighters had the opponent in an instant kill strike but held back. Kakashi's kunai was within an inch of the opponent, but Guy stopped his nunchaku in the middle of the strike, causing it to miss the back of Kakashi's skull and take a few hairs off the top of his head. When they were heading in different directions, Guy said, "See you next week, Kakashi." Kakashi turned to face him and said, "Well, I know the drill. Ha ha ha. Oh boy, I hate this." Kakashi thought, this constant fighting, but Guy is a very interesting even if he is insane. Kakashi shunshined, out of here, and Guy followed suit. Tower of Hokage. The old Hokage saw his young pupil thinking deeply and asked, "Have you found a taijutsu style you like?" Because the fight he witnessed was so amazing, Naruto seemed to be in a daze as he reenacted it in his mind. He began to get ideas for a style that helps him against armed and non-armed opponents. He had to go and try it out and get the katas right, or do you have another idea in mind? The Hokage became curious about Naruto's thoughts but chose not to reveal them. "Okay, Naruto, you are dismissed and we will continue at home," he said, jolting out of his reverie. "No sensei, I have found something but I have to make sure of it before I will show you." "Hi sensei. I would like to talk to you about some news as soon as possible," Naruto said. Naruto bowed to the Hokage and proceeded to the door. The Hokage sighed, which worried Naruto, but he smiled and left the office through the hallway. The ninja who worked there gave him glares or silence as he passed, which irritated him because he didn't understand the reason for all of this hatred. He chose to ignore it and smiled, recalling the fight between the village's best. Since he hadn't eaten breakfast and it was now past noon, he heard his stomach growl. He had an epiphany and leapt to his feet, exclaiming, "Ichiraku ramen. Here I come." The villagers were staring at him as usual, but this time they paid him no attention at all as he dashed toward the stand. When he arrived at the stand, the Ichiraku family greeted him, and Tucci exclaimed, "Hey! Who are you doing, Naruto? Do you want the standard?" "Yeah, but first give me a beef ramen," Naruto said with a smile. "Okay, Naruto." Tucci turned his head to the left and said, "Ayame, get me the beef ramen." Ayame nodded and said, "Yes, Father O. How are you?" He ate his food in silence, but he was very happy because he was about to make a new taijutsu style. Naruto was gulping down the last dish when he remembered the Sandaime asking him to come home earlier than usual. Naruto was glad that he had people who cared for him, so he waited happily for his order without knowing that today would be a day he might dread. He then pulled out his little frog-shaped wallet, which he called Gama-chan, saying, "Thank you G-chan and thank you to Ayame Ni-chan." He took out the money and gave it to the Ichiraku family before beginning to jog to the Sarutobi estate, indicating that he had something very important to tell him. The Sarutobi estate. He had a slight argument with his wife about their little blonde boy, and she was upset with him for his choice and would not speak to him anymore. The Hokage was waiting for the blonde ball of energy to return when he heard a knock on the door and the Sandaime shouted for him to enter. When Naruto opened the door, he saw his grandfather in distress and asked, "Oji-chan, Oba-san, are you okay?" They looked at the boy and the Sandaime replied, "No Naruto. Nothing is amiss. However, since you returned home, we must have a private conversation in my study. Please, Naruto, would you follow me?" Naruto saw the seriousness in the Hokage face and nodded saying, "Hi." Naruto entered the study first, followed by the elderly man, and the Hokage closed the door after asking him to sit down. Naruto sat down in his armchair and the Hokage looked at him, saying, "Naruto, listen, you have to go to leave us and start to live alone." Naruto was shocked, thinking that he had lost his family and home, and he asked, "Don't you like me anymore?" The Hokage goes on, "Naruto, you are aware that we are not your biological parents. We will always love you, though, especially since you will soon begin attending the Ninja Academy. I found you a place to live. You're going there tonight." Naruto's eyes were sad and lonely, as though he had stabbed the elderly man. "Oji-chan, what have I done to anger you?" said Naruto. The Hokage approached Naruto, took hold of both of his shoulders, and uttered the words, "No, Naruto, you did nothing to infuriate me. But occasionally, this is how things are meant to be." Naruto was staring at the ground when the Hokage raised his hand and put it beneath his chin, forcing him to look directly into his eyes. "When you're ready, Naruto, I'll tell you everything. Therefore, please don't assume that I've hated you or anything else. I have a lot on my mind," the elderly man said to his grandson figure. Naruto looked at him, tears in his eyes, but he held them, nodded, and ran to the door, slamming it behind him as he went. With a loud sigh, the Hokage turned to face the running boy before his wife entered the study and said, "That went better than I expected." Her husband turned to face her and said, "I know that, but what can I do? I still don't like this Koichi." She sighed and turned to observe the young boy's behavior. "You know I haven't liked this as much as you do, but my hands are tied." Ground of Training 7 Naruto ran to the first training ground he came across, which was a clearing with a few training logs. Gazing at the logs with tears in his eyes, threatening to fall, Naruto approached them and began to kick and punch them as hard as he could, until he stopped hitting them at random and began to yell in frustration and anguish as he fell to the ground. He got up after his emotional outburst, dried his tears, and brushed the dirt off his clothes. He recalled the techniques he had developed and began to think and stand in various stances to get the right one. He began to hit the log in controlled punches and kicks, beginning to develop his own taijutsu, but he was prepared for the long and bumpy road ahead. 12 years following the incident in Kyuubi, the abduction of the Hyuga heiress and the Uchiha massacre were the two events that had impacted Konohagakure no Sato, and although 12 years had gone by since that terrible day, it was not the only thing that had happened to the village. It was a quiet morning in Konohagakure no Sato until a loud-mouthed boy, perhaps 12 or 13 years old, started laughing uncontrollably. His reason was straightforward. He painted the Hokage monument in slang graffiti, shocking the people of Konoha, but the Hokage already knew who would do it. Some civilians came into his office and told him about the prank, but he believed them after looking at the monuments. Look at all those doodles, he thought as he studied it. Even my face was subjected to it. That despite Naruto's extreme annoyance, this is how he draws attention to himself. He didn't even demonstrate his full potential at the Ninja Academy, and I feel bad for him. The Hokage sighed as he left his staring and went back to his office, remembering that both of his parents were masters in many facets of the shinobi way. In the meantime, Naruto, as he continued to paint his graffiti on the Hokage's faces, Naruto was smearing paint on his right cheek. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit with blue on the upper shoulders and down the front, a white swirl with a tassel on the left side, a red swirl on the back, a large white collar, orange pants, and blue sandals. He had a pair of green goggles around his forehead and was having a great time applying the final touches to his masterpiece using buckets of paint. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and you don't understand. Ha ha ha." As he waited for his pursuer to catch up to him, he was laughing. A dozen or more Chunin were pursuing him, but Naruto was much faster and more sly than them, and he was laughing as he told them, "You never get me since I am the great Uzumaki Naruto, Sama." He ran and jumped towards an alley, but his pursuer continued because he had used the camouflage cloak technique to blend in with the alley's wall. He was laughing and giggling when suddenly his name was yelled behind him, startled, and he turned to face his academy teacher, Amino Iruka, who gave him a fierce look and yelled, "What do you think you're doing, Naruto? You should be in class, right?" Iruka became enraged when Naruto grinned and scratched the back of his head, so he restrained Naruto and teleported using the Shunshin no Jutsu. Academy of Ninjas. When the class clown Naruto was tied up and on the ground in front of the class in one particular class, the teacher Iruka turned to Naruto and said, somewhat angrily, "Why haven't you come to class today?" Iruka became enraged and yelled at everyone, "Okay, surprise. Test everyone," as Naruto turned away from him and hoofed. Iruka said, "You're up, Haruno Sakura." Sakura responded, "Hi, sensei." The students all groaned as he said, "Hurry up and form a line and do the henge no jutsu to look like me." Sakura then stepped forward, performed some hand seals, and finished it in the ram seal, shouting, "Henge." There was a poof of smoke. She appeared as the exact replica of Iruka. Iruka looked at her, and then wrote something on his teacher's notepad. Sakura depleted the jutsu and was smiling as she thought, "How do you like that, Sasuke-kun?" Then another Sakura appeared in her mind and looked like her except she was in inverted colors. Gray body color with white lines. She had white eyes and had the kanji for inner Sakura written on her rather large forehead, and she shouted, "I kicked butt, Shanaru." Iruka glanced at the line and shouted, "Next, your turn, Uchiha Sasuke." Sasuke, with his hands in his pockets, stepped forward and, like Sakura, transformed into an exact replica of Iruka. Iruka then repeated the same action, and Sasuke depleted the henge. He returned to the line in silence as he came. Iruka glanced at the notepad to see who was next and yelled, "Uzumaki Naruto, you're next." Just as Naruto was ready to leave the line, he heard Ino Yamanaka and Shikamaru Nara whisper, "It's your entire fault for this surprise test, Baka." Naruto said, "Like I care, Dabayo?" without even looking back at them. Naruto stepped forward, and as he did, a certain girl called Hyuga Hinata wished him good luck. He placed his hand in the ram hand seal and bent his knees as he concentrated on his charka, and a fury of chakra surrounded him in a dome. He shouted, "Henge no jutsu." A cloud of smoke appeared as it covered him from sight. Then suddenly, when the smoke started to disappear, a nude girl with a beautiful body, whisker-like marks on her cheeks and long blonde hair tied in a pair of ponytails appeared, moaned and winked sexily at Iruka. Since Iruka was a normal guy, He blushed and flew back as blood shot out of his nostrils exaggeratedly as the scene was too much for his senses. Luckily the other students didn't see it because of the smoke, and even if they did, small bits of the smoke covered her important parts. Naruto was laughing as he saw his teacher's reaction. Ha 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 ha. I created the jutsu and then suddenly Iruka stood up and ran to Naruto, bumping him on the head with his fist while yelling, "Don't make such useless jutsu," as he continued to laugh. Baka. Given how painful that punch was, Naruto put both hands on his head. Later in the afternoon, as Naruto sat on the sandame's nose and washed the paint off, he was irate and frustrated, occasionally mouthing a few expletive words. Iruka was watching him closely and yelled, "Naruto, you but clean the whole thing by sundown." Iruka's eyes softened, and Naruto called out to him. Naruto narrowed his eyes and said, "Nani?" Iruka went on, "After you finish this, how about we have some ramen together?" While he was scratching his nose, Naruto looked at him, smiled and yelled, "Now that's great, I'll get this done quickly." Iruka shook his head and laughed at his antics. At Ichiraku Ramen in the evening, Iruka was grinning when she asked Naruto, "Why have you done that to the Hokage monument, Naruto?" Naruto and Iruka were seen eating ramen together. "Are you unaware of the identity of the Hokage?" In response, Naruto said, "Of course I know who the Hokage are, Datbeo, and among them is the fourth Hokage who saved the village from the Kyuubi no Yoko." He then began to eat from his bowl of ramen. "One did it for that reason, and becoming the greatest Hokage is my dream. People will stop treating me disrespectfully and begin to treat me like a real person in this way." Someone significant. After listening to Naruto and carrying on with his meal, Iruka turned to face the young boy and said, "Iruka. Sensei, may I ask you a favor?" "What do you want, Naruto?" Iruka asked, casting a suspicious glance at him. "Would you like seconds?" Nay, Iruka. "Sensei, could you give me your Hide.8? Naruto said, placing his in a pleading position. "Would you please?" As he was adjusting it, Iruka responded, looking surprised. Damn Naruto. You will be allowed to wear one of these only when you graduate." Naruto was not pleased with the request and said, "Come on Iruka. Sensei, don't be so stingy." "Oh," Iruka concluded, "so that's why you removed your goggles. Ha 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 ha." He started to laugh, but his laughter was cut short. Naruto was now annoyed, and to Iruka's dismay he shouted, "I want seconds." "Oh. So Naruto was going to bankrupt him," Iruka yelled. Ninja Academy. The following morning, as the academy students waited in their seats for their assigned sensei to arrive in their usual class, they heard the door slide open and the classroom sensei Iruka enter. However, they were all aware that today was the day of the Genin graduation exam, which caused a certain loud-mouthed, blonde boy to become quite agitated. When he walks into the classroom, the pupils say, "Good morning, Iruka. Sensei." When he said, "As you all know, today is your graduation exam. It will be held in the next room. Come over there when you hear your name being called, and the test is the Bushin no Jutsu." Naruto completely collapsed and began to agitatedly grab his spiky yellow hair, thinking something along the lines of, "Damn. Which one is it? My worst jutsu is that." Iruka began testing the potential genin by calling Naruto's name, who came into the room and stood in the middle of it, directly in front of his teachers. "Naruto knows the test, so are you ready?" Iruka asked. He saw Naruto nod at him, and he did a familiar set of hand seals and shouted, "Bushin no Jutsu." As the smoke dispersed, Iruka and Mizuki noticed that Naruto had only one clone, and a completely useless dead clone at that, and that smoke had completely engulfed him. Mizuki was thinking, "This is pathetic. The Kyuubi, the most powerful Biju in existence, is reduced to this failure of a child," as Iruka was faulting and staring in shock. "It can't do an E-rank jutsu like Bushin." Mizuki grinned and said, "Perhaps I can use the Kyuubi brat." Iruka yelled, "Fail." "Iruka. Sensei," Mizuki said, catching the Chunin's attention. This is his third time, and he did technically make a clone, which caused Naruto to feel sad and angry. "No way, Mizuki." "Sensei," Iruka said, fanning his hand in the negative, "but we could let him pass." Naruto created a single, useless clone, while everyone else created at least 3. "I can't let him go because of this." Beyond the academy, Naruto failed, but not because he didn't study, but because he couldn't perform a fairly simple E-level jutsu. He didn't know that he couldn't perform the jutsu because of his exceptionally high chakra capacity, but he had no one to tell him that. While he sat sadly on a swing on the opposite side of the academy, he saw the other students were happy, smiling, and chatting among themselves while their parents praised them. Both women were talking about their kids when they saw a boy sitting by himself on a swing under a tree. They frowned as they realized who the boy was, and the first one said, "Hey, isn't that kid?" The second one said, "Oh yeah. The other woman replied, "Well, that's good. Did you know that he was the only one who failed?" They both regarded the boy with cold, hateful, and disdainful eyes. "We don't want him to be a shinobi." The old Hokage, who was there to congratulate the newly made genin, saw how the villagers felt and behaved toward Naruto and felt sorry for the boy. As he was about to speak to Iruka, he put his goggles on his forehead, his hair bangs covering his eyes as if to conceal his extreme loneliness and sadness, and then he disappeared, leaving an empty swaying swing. Naruto was walking home depressed when suddenly someone shouted his name. He was shocked and assumed that he had offended someone, as everyone seemed to despise him for some reason he was unaware of, and he turned to face the direction he heard the shout from. To his surprise, he saw Mizuki, and he shouted, "Mizuki! Sensei!" Mizuki smiled gently at the attention, starved boy and instructed him to follow him. Naruto's apartment building's rooftop he signed and said, "Naruto, you know that Iruka Sensei is a very serious person." Mizuki hated to be this close to Naruto, or what the villagers call him, Demon Child, but in order for his evil scheme to succeed, he would need to trick Naruto into believing him, and he can't do that without actually talking to the brat. So here he is, listening to this demon talk about how people should behave, which is ironic given that demons do nothing but destroy everything around them, including human life, and do not consider humans of any value. Then why does Iruka Sensei always pick on me? Naruto asked, glancing at him. His parents were killed when he was young, so he had to do everything by himself. He probably sees himself in you. Try to understand Iruka Sensei's feelings since you have no parents too, Mizuki said, pausing to look at Naruto for a moment before turning away. Naruto, for his part, never considered it that way and pondered in silence before stating sadly, "But I wish I had graduated, I really do." Now that he had caught him in his scheme, Mizuki smirked and turned to face Naruto, saying, "Oh well, that attracted our little friend's attention," and his only wise response was, "Huh." Mizuki smiled as he was reeling in the catch so that he could continue. "Let me tell you a little special secret on how to graduate." Naruto sat there listening to Mizuki Sensei with full attention, both happy and shocked that he would finally graduate, which made Mizuki laugh because the child didn't know what he was doing. The Hokage's residence at night. Later that night, Naruto had just entered the Hokage's residence and on his way to the Hokage's room. Mizuki Sensei told him that there was a secret room that contained a vault that contained all the scrolls of the village and told him how to get there and which scroll to take. Mizuki Sensei also told him to be conscious of the Anbu and other ninja that usually work in the tower. He also told him that it was a test to see that he can infiltrate a secure location or not. Naruto looked around as he walking down the hallway to the Hokage's room. He saw the door and silently looked around to see if anyone was there. Naruto signed as he had held his breath when he had started to open the door. He walked in and took a deep breath. He walked to the center of the room and said to himself, "Oh, thank Kami Sama, nobody is here, Dabbeo." But as he was about to walk towards the secret room when he jumped as he heard someone talk to him. That someone was the Sandaime Hokage, and he said to the boy as he exited the secret room, "Naruto, what are you doing at my home in my office at this hour?" When the elderly Hokage approached from behind, Naruto was at a loss for what to do, so he did the first thing that occurred to him and yelled, "Oroku no Jutsu." When Naruto saw that the old man had been knocked unconscious in his henge, he turned back to himself and signed, "So much for the strongest ninja in the village. I am disappointed, Gigi. I never thought you were like everyone else, ha 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 ha." That jutsu was too much for the poor old Hokage, not because he was weak, but because he was an old pervert. It surprised him, and he just took one look at the girl that Naruto had transformed, and he shot back with nasty nosebleed to fall on the ground. He began to make his way to the hidden chamber, where he discovered a massive vault with numerous writings that extended from the vault's center to its corners, in the middle of which was a square with a handle for opening the vault. Fortunately, the vault was not closed, so Naruto pulled at the handle to open it, even though he discovered it was a bit too heavy for him. However, he continued to pull until he felt it move, so he stopped and began to enter the vault, which contained a room larger than the Hokage's office and was covered in scrolls of all sizes and colors. As he continued inside, he noticed a table with a few scrolls on it, but they didn't seem to pique his attention. Next, he reached a rather large bookcase with the words, "For the Hokage's eyes only," written in large, bold red kanji. Naruto took that as a challenge and proceeded to the wall with the bookcase, where he noticed a closed section. He used his nails to open the small crack, and to his amazement, he discovered a secret compartment with 3 scrolls. He began to survey the area and take note of everything he saw inside the secret compartment. He saw 3 large scrolls, which were different from the others in the room and also different in color. The first was jet black, with a white sealing rope tied around it and no other symbols, but its color was frightening because it seemed to be absorbing light. It was white, but not dull white, but the brightest white he had ever seen, with crimson red on the sides and a red spiral design on it. Like the first, it had a powerful aura but a brilliant presence in contrast to the first. The last one was rather plain, with a light yellow base, 2 green lines on each side, a line on the edge thicker than the inner line, and the words, Fuin no Sho, written in black. As he pulled the rather large scroll, he heard a clang and saw a jet black sword he had never seen before. Fuin no Sho. That's the scroll that Mizuki Sensei told me about, he thought. Why is there a sword here? He asked. Not getting an answer, he started to reading the sword with his eyes. The sword was total black, no shiny jet black, the same color if not darker than the black scroll. The tsuba was a tightly coiled spiral and it was same color as the blade of the sword. The tsuka tied using black tsukamaki cloth and the cloth beneath it was crimson red. It was an entrancing sword and had a deep and powerful force within it that drew Naruto towards it. Naruto shook his head. He never knew anything about swords, but how did he know every detail about this one in particular? Nevertheless, Naruto shook his head and stopped himself when he remembered that he had to take the scroll and use it outside the Hokage residence. As he turns to run, Naruto failed to notice that the black scroll started to vibrate and an array of seals appeared around it indicating activation. Naruto already had left the room when the seals covered the scroll completely, and then it just a flash of light and it vanished into thin air, but none was the wiser. He pulled the rather large scroll and ran as fast as his legs can carry him with the scroll tied to his back. He reached the window and jumped out. Now, let's see, what do we have here that I can learn? Naruto said to himself as he unfurled the scroll and sat on the ground, his usual training spot. Kage Bushin no Jutsu is the first jutsu, right? Then, with a growl, Naruto exclaimed, what the hell? Why must I begin with the one I struggle with, Kuso? Then he noticed some information about the jutsu, and he discovered that the Kage Bushin no Jutsu has some secret uses other than being a distraction or being used to outnumber his opponent. In fact, contrary to popular belief, the Kage Bushin no Jutsu was prohibited not because it was a kinjutsu, but because it could be a lethal jutsu if used improperly. The clones are capable of performing techniques on their own, and they can even bleed, but they usually disperse after 1 or 2 solid blows, and they can also disperse on their own. The clones created will be roughly the same condition as the original. In contrast to Bushin no Jutsu, the clones created from this jutsu are real copies. Therefore, anything they learn in their existence was pasted onto the user of the jutsu, making them perfect scouts because they dispel themselves when they see the intended target and send their information gathered to the original without returning. It is also useful for training purposes, as the total amount of experience the user gains is multiplied by the total number of clones being used to train. For instance, if a user creates 1 shadow clone and trains with it for an hour, then dispels the clone, the user gains 2 hours of training in 1 hour by adding the hours of clone and the user together. However, like all kinjutsu, it has a negative side effect because it strains the user's mind from training the clones and from the mental feedback the said user receives. Naruto did not understand most of it and put this information away for later when he would ask Hokage Jiji or Iruka Sensei. He then learned about other jutsu that he thought would be cool and began training on those jutsu as well, discovering that some were very easy while others were nearly impossible. Despite this, he kept on swearing and training. Mizuki outside the Hokage residence. Mizuki was outside the Hokage's residence, observing Naruto as he entered and exited the building to make sure he had the scroll on him. When he saw Naruto jump out the window with the Fuin no Sho tied to his back by a rope and blurring towards the forest, he grinned evilly, thinking, now I have to start the second part of my plan. I have to wait and let the Hokage notice that the scroll is missing and order the shinobi to look for Naruto. So I have to wait. No. Mizuki was patient because he had to be in order to deceive the village into taking the Fuin no Sho, and he left the area to get ready to leave Konohagakure no Sato. After completing all his necessities, a ninja arrived at his house to tell him about Naruto's theft of the Fuin no Sho. Mizuki pretended to be shocked and told the ninja that he would tell Iruka because the Hokage had ordered a full-scale search for the boy. Mizuki then went to his friend, Iruka. The house of Iruka lying on his bed, Iruka was lost in thought, reflecting on what the Hokage had told him, the Hokage's explanation of Naruto's actions. Flashback, Iruka, do you understand why Naruto behaves in this manner? Iruka shook his head negatively, knowing no answer to the Hokage's question because he did care about the boy at all. The old man gave him a small, dejected smile and said, Naruto acts the way he does because he wants attention. Do you know who he makes me think of? Iruka shook his head in the negative, still unsure of where this was going. The old Hokage smiled again and said to young Chunin, "Naruto reminds me of you when you were young, my dear boy." Iruka was shocked because he knew that the Sandaime Hokage was aware that he had lost his parents in the Kyuubi attack 12 years prior, and unlike you, Iruka, Naruto had no memory of his parents. Consider the kind of loneliness he experienced and continues to experience. The Hokage left the academy where he was teaching Chunin to reflect. Iruka, like the others, believed that Naruto was the Kyuubi, not Kitsune. He recalled the day the Kyuubi killed his parents, when it attacked the village for no apparent reason and began destroying it and killing its shinobi. He could still remember the evil chakra, its roar, its size, and most importantly, its red, no, it was crimson red like blood eyes, that screamed death and destruction. Iruka had never been this scared in his 12 years of life, and he had even sustained a cut on his face. Then there was another shockwave, and his parents, who were engaged in combat, told him to leave the battlefield, but he refused, so they had to ask one of their friends to take him to safety. Iruka refused, saying he would help. The ninja simply lifted him up and dragged him to safety. End flashback. Iruka was startled out of his reverie by a knock on his door, and he got out of bed, asking himself, who would come at this hour of the night? He signed and opened the door only to see Mizuki puffed, as he was starting to breathe heavily. He looked at Iruka with panic clearly on his face. Iruka did not know what to say, so he asked him, "What is the matter, Mizuki?" When Mizuki finally appeared to be able to speak, he yelled, "Naruto had stolen the legendary Fuin no Shoas as a prank, and the Hokage has ordered to meet him at the gate of his residence." Iruka was shocked that Naruto would do this and was afraid that his fellow shinobi would not take this prank well. Iruka then told Mizuki, "Then just wait for me to wear my clothes, I will be on my way." Mizuki then said, "Iruka, I will see you there." He then fled and disappeared in the direction of the Hokage's residence. Outside the Hokage house, the Hokage had gone to his ninja to calm the enraged shinobi who were on the verge of killing Naruto, fearing that they would do something the village would later regret. "Hokage Sama, we cannot let this slide as a childish prank," yelled a random shinobi. Mizuki got there in time to hear another shinobi say, "The Shodai Hokage had to seal the Fuin no Sho to protect the village because it is so dangerous. It could spell disaster for our village, Hokage Sama, if it is used improperly." Another shinobi offered his opinion, stating, "Hokage Sama, it would be a huge problem for our village if he were to leave with the scroll." The Hokage broke his silence by giving his ninja the order, It has been more than half a day since the scroll was taken." Iruka had just arrived, shocked by what his fellow ninja had said, and had to clench his jaws because he knew they might kill him if they found him. "Bring Naruto back right away, please." His shinobi all replied in simultaneously. "Hi." The Hokage then swung his hand in a rising arc to tell his shinobi to leave, and they all disappeared, leaving behind a cloud of smoke and dust. The entire village, an hour later while searching for Naruto in one of his favorite locations, Iruka paused to catch his breath and asked himself, "Where are you, Naruto?" He then recalled a hidden hut a little distance from his training ground, and as he took off, he prayed, "Please be there, Naruto." Meanwhile, Mizuki, armed to the teeth and carrying two rather large shuriken on his back, was leaping and running at high speeds in search of the blonde child. Mizuki grinned and thought to himself, "I will spread word of what had Naruto done throughout the village. I will then kill him when I reach him," giving the impression that he used the scroll to flee the village. As he continued to leap away, his smirk transformed into a full-fledged evil smile. "Then the Fuin no Sho will be all mine." The forest of Konoha. Naruto was practicing the jutsu he had read about in the Fuin no Sho. Since he had a few hours, he found some jutsu that he could do with ease. When he got tired, he sat down and began wheezing, with his head on the ground and the scroll fastened to his back with a single line of cloth. He was so focused on catching his breath that he did not appear to notice his or her shadow before he looked up and saw Iruka glaring at him. Naruto. With a fox-like grin, Naruto smirked and began to rub the back of his head, a habit he picked up after being caught, so to speak, with his hand in the cook jar. Then he yelled at Iruka, "Oh, I located you. You're a nose bleeder." Then Iruka replied angrily, "Baka. I located you." Naruto appeared to have accomplished something noteworthy, and Iruka saw that he was not frightened or upset about being discovered, which was unusual. "Hey Naruto. Why are you all beat up and what were you doing here?" Iruka asked Naruto after noticing the boy's injuries, which included cuts, scratches, and dirt smudges. Naruto, who was still laughing, said, "You found me." Iruka thought to himself, "So you were practicing here? I was learning some really cool jutsu. Which was sufficient to harm your body as well? What was he doing?" "Don't worry about that, Iruka. Sensei." Anyo saw Anyo-sa. I've picked up some really awesome jutsu. I assume you will graduate me if I prove myself. After giving the blonde prankster a close examination, Iruka questioned, "Where did you get that scroll, Naruto?" Naruto grinned and flipped, showing his back with the scroll attached to Iruka. He said, "Oh, this?" Naruto exclaimed, "Mizuki. Sensei told me about it and where to find it. If I show you the jutsu I have learned from that scroll," he said, "without a doubt, you'll graduate me." What did Mizuki do? As he screamed in his mind, Iruka suddenly felt the urge to kill and heard kunai flying through the air. He pushed Naruto hard away from him to shield him from the hail of kunai that were hurled at them. Naruto was talking to his favorite teacher 1 minute, and then he saw that teacher impaled by multiple kunai. He was so shocked that he turned to face the direction from which the kunai had come, and he was even more shocked to see who had done it. Mizuki, the teacher who had helped him, had just attempted to kill him and Iruka. Sensei. When he first looked at his favorite teacher, he saw that he was almost like a pincushion. Then he yelled, "Hey! Hello! What on earth is happening here? Hello! Could someone please tell me something?" Mizuki said, emotionlessly, "Give me the scroll, Naruto." Naruto. Even if it means losing your life, don't give the scroll to Mizuki. Fortunately, his wounds were not deep enough to reach his vital organs, but they still hurt like hell. Naruto, the scroll you have with you is the legendary Fuin no Sho, Iruka said, taking a deep breath and extracting a couple of kunai from his chest and abdomen. There is forbidden ninjutsu sealed inside a dangerous scroll. You had just been used by Mizuki to obtain the scroll. To say that Naruto was shocked would be an understatement, and he gave Mizuki a fierce look. "You fucking bastard." At the smirking traitor, Naruto roared, "I will show you." Mizuki's smirk turned to a blown laughter, and she smiled at the boy who was getting more and more angry. "Naruto, you know that that scroll is useless to you, so hand it over to me and I will kill you swiftly and mercifully," she said, "but before I end your misery, I will make you even more miserable, you demon brat." "Naruto, do you know why everyone in this godforsaken village despises you so much?" he went on. "Did you know that there is a rule, too?" He was interrupted by Iruka, who yelled, "Yanero Mizuki, it's prohibited." Mizuki grinned and went on, "You know what happened 12 years ago? The Yondaime defeated the Kyuubi no Yoko and he killed it." He focused on the words, defeat and killed, adding, "The Yondaime did not kill the Kyuubi, rather he sealed it into a baby born on that night." Naruto was shaken by this revelation, but Mizuki did not stop. "Naruto, did you know that there is a rule? How about you?" As a child, Naruto was intrigued by this rule and yelled at Mizuki, "Rule? Which rule are you referring to?" "Oh, the rule is that nobody was allowed to talk about the fact that you are the Kyuubi no Yoko sealed in the body of a human," Mizuki said with a merciless smile. Naruto responded, "Huh, what does that mean to you?" "That means you are the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the Biju that killed Iruka's parents and was about to destroy Konohagakure no Sato. You were sealed up the same Hokage that you admired and," Iruka yelled, "Stop it, Mizuki." But Mizuki ignored her cries for him to stop. However, it was ignored as he stood ready to deliver the last nail in the coffin, so to speak, saying, "Everyone has been lying to you. Didn't you think it was strange that you were despised by everyone in this village? He is also the same as Iruka, in fact, he also despises you." Naruto remembered the cold stares and the hatred from the people of the village when he was younger. He started to cry in anger and sadness as he closed his eyes and continued to cry his heart out while subconsciously drawing out gigantic amounts of chakra out of his body. Naruto was shouting and cursing, saying, "Chikusho Chikusho Chikusho." Iruka saw and felt the sadness and anger that Naruto was releasing, and his body was in a crouching position with his hair standing tall as his chakra radiated out of him. However, no one was aware that a series of barcode like seals had appeared on his head. The horizontal bars on his forehead branched out in 4 different directions, creating an X pattern. However, a barcode seal at the back of his head appeared to create the same pattern, but vertical seals instead. Then, the seals on his forehead and neck reached each other and crossed over each other, covering his entire cranium before canceling each other out and shattering. However, Naruto felt something during the process, as his green goggles covered the forehead seal, his hair covered the neck seal, and the burr created by his explosive chakra, so no one could tell what had happened. Mizuki removed one of his massive shuriken from his back and started spinning it like a buzzsaw, adding to Naruto's suffering, "Nobody will ever accept you." Iruka recalled what the Sandaime Hokage had told him about the boy. He has never experienced the love of a parent. He is also despised by the village due to that incident. He is looking for any means to be acknowledged for his existence. He thus causes a lot of trouble in order to attract attention. He presents a tough exterior, but on the inside, he is in pain. At last, Mizuki uttered, "That scroll you're holding is the same one that sealed you up. I hope you rot in hell, brat. Goodbye." After saying that, Mizuki decided it was time to end the brat's suffering and threw the big spinning shuriken at the distraught boy to kill him. Naruto saw Mizuki throw the shuriken at him and began to crawl to try to save himself, but when he heard metal piercing flesh and bone and saw blood splattered on the ground, he looked up to see his favorite teacher take the huge shuriken in the back to protect him. Iruka was bleeding from his mouth, and a few drops of blood fell on Naruto's right cheek. In a low, quiet voice, Naruto questioned, "Naze, my parents, after they died I had nobody to compliment me, talk to me, or acknowledge me. I was so sad back then." Iruka began to recall his childhood actions, recalling how he had behaved similarly, if not exactly like Naruto, and how it hurt him to see Naruto in that manner. He reflected on how lonely it was to be alive and see everyone happy with their families while he was alone at home. His eyes began to well up with tears as he gazed at Naruto. "Naruto, yeah, I know that you have been through a lot of pain too, haven't you?" Iruka began. "I'm very sorry, Naruto. If I had done my job better, you would have felt that pain, the pain of loneliness." Naruto's eyes widened as he noticed that his sensei was aware of his suffering, but he remembered Mizuki's words and began to run while the person frowned. Iruka called out to him as he began to run, but he continued to run. Mizuki grinned as he positioned himself behind Iruka using the Shunshin no Jutsu. He laughed and remarked, "Hee, sumimasen, but Naruto isn't the type to have a change of heart. He intends to exact revenge on the village using the scroll. Earlier, you and I both saw those eyes of his. Those were not human eyes, but the eyes of an enraged Akuma. Hee." Iruka began to take deep breaths as he readied himself to remove the object stuck in his back. After he reached for and removed the excessively large shuriken, he got up, turned slowly in Mizuki's direction, and threw the shuriken at him. Mizuki simply avoids the weapon with a sly smile. "Naruto is not like that." Iruka drew his breath and said, "In any case, it doesn't matter to me because I'm going to kill him. Take the Fuin no Sho, and then come back to finish you." As he finished, Mizuki jumped to the trees and ran after Naruto, using his speed. Iruka began to stand, thinking, "There's no way I'm going to let you kill Naruto Mizuki," and jumped after his former best friend, the traitor. "In the village, we should have killed him and saved ourselves this trouble," yelled one of the Konoha ninja who had gathered in the center of a clearing in front of the Hokage resident. Another unidentified ninja yelled, "We must reach him before he unleashes the power of the demon. Kill the brat right away if you find him because he is now much too dangerous." With a collective yell of approval, the ninja began to disperse throughout the village. Residents of the Hokage, he chokes at the memory and clears his throat with a cough, saying, "Now is not the time for these kinds of thoughts," and signs heavily. The old Hokage was using his Hijutsu Tomagain no Jutsu with a special crystal ball. The Hokage can see and track anyone, but there is a catch. The user must know that person's chakra pattern or it will not work. Additionally, the Hokage has a perverted advantage to someone who masters it. "What happened to you, Naruto, Kami-sama?" He felt a high burst in Naruto's chakra pattern and abruptly snapped out of his muse, saying in a low voice, "Hijutsu Tomagain no Jutsu." His crystal began to glow and he saw Naruto, who was saved by Iruka, who then took the kunai attack instead of the boy. This made Naruto even more terrified, and since he had the Fuin no Sho, he could break the seal on the Kyuubi and release it, but it was a remote possibility. As Hokage, he had to consider all of his options because the village's welfare came first, but he never imagined that Naruto might actually do it despite the village. The forest of Konoha. In an attempt to stop his former best friend from killing an innocent child, Iruka followed Naruto as he fled from Mizuki, who was attempting to kill him. Iruka reached Naruto first, positioned himself beside him, and yelled, "Hurry! Give the Fuin no Sho to me." Mizuki is pursuing it. Naruto held back on a branch and suddenly shot shoulder. Tackled Iruka, who fell towards the harsh ground rolling. Naruto skidded to a stop. Iruka looked at Naruto with deep scowl and said, How did you know I wasn't Iruka?" A puff of smoke appeared, indicating that Mizuki had used the Henge no Jutsu. Naruto slumped as he held the rather large scroll and used the tree behind him as support. He leaned his back on it as he fell and sat on the ground. He laughed as a familiar smoke appeared and revealed an injured Iruka and a log. "Because I'm Iruka." Mizuki smirked and replied only with an, "I see." Naruto was hiding behind a tree a few feet away from the Chunin, still carrying the scroll, and he was focused on listening to what they had to say to one another. Mizuki broke the silence first, laughing evilly, "Hee, you even transformed to the one that killed your parents to protect him? You bastard, I wouldn't give you the scroll." You know you are a fool, Iruka, Iruka yelled. I am the same as Naruto, replied Mizuki with a smirk. Iruka did understand and asked, the same? You can do anything you want with the powerful jutsu if you use the skills and jutsu in that scroll, Naruto said, listening to this conversation with little interest. It is impossible that the Kyuubi no Yoko would not attempt to use that kind of power, Mizuki explained. Contrary to what he was assuming, Iruka then surprised Naruto by confirming Mizuki's claim by replying. Yeah. Naruto felt like he was stabbed by kunai while narrowing his eyes in anger and thought, damn. I was aware of it, now that I think about it, even Iruka Sensei, in her heart, doesn't acknowledge it. When Naruto heard Iruka say, the Kyuubi no Yoko would do that, but Naruto is different, the dark thoughts in his mind ceased. Iruka took a deep breath and said, he is, I acknowledge him as one of my excellent students. Naruto was taken aback and shocked beyond comprehension. He may not be the hardest worker, and he's clumsy so nobody accepts him. He already understands what it's like to experience heartache. Iruka's words touched Naruto, who sagged and embraced the scroll, saying, he isn't the Kyuubi no Yoko and never was. He is a member of Konohagakure no Sato. After receiving recognition from his favorite teacher, Naruto burst into tears of joy and sorrow. Iruka then declared emphatically, he is Uzumaki Naruto of Konohagakure no Sato. With nothing to say, Mizuki looked at Iruka angrily and mentally cursed before saying, okay, whatever, as he unbuckled his second enormous shuriken. Iruka saw him and attempted to move, but his wounds were too deep, and he yelled as the pain worsened and even began to bleed more. Iruka, I said I would take care of you later. Mizuki held out his shuriken and said, but I am changing my mind as you are becoming a bother. As he prepared his aim and began to spin the large shuriken quickly, Iruka thought to himself, so this is my end, huh? Hurry up and die, he cried. As he leaned for the kill, Iruka believed it was his last moment. Just as Mizuki was about to let it fly and finish Iruka, our young hero, Uzumaki Naruto, attacked and knocked him back. The shuriken missed Iruka by a mile and collided with a tree branch, and Naruto skidded to a stop while still holding the Fuin no Sho. Naruto got up, his eyes glaring at Mizuki as he passed judgment, still holding the large scroll on the ground. I will kill you if you even consider touching Iruka, sense. Baka. What made you come out? Get out, yelled Iruka at the boy who ignored him. Shut up. I'll kill a punk like you in a single shot. Returned Naruto's shout, Kizo Yaro. I'll return the pain 1,000-fold if you try it. Naruto is now placing his fingers and hands in a unique hand seal. His index and middle finger in both hands crossed each other with right hand parallel to his face while the other was parallel to the ground. Iruka was shocked, as he knew that techniques from that scroll are very difficult and dangerous but could not believe it. Mizuki blindly taunted Naruto saying, then do it Baka Kitsune. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto complied and yelled loudly. And hundreds upon hundreds of Naruto copies appeared surrounding both the Chunin. Mizuki was shocked, better yet outright scared at this development, as he looked everywhere terrified only to see the damn brats clones started to say, what? What's happening? He was looking all around him as he stumbled and fell on his ass out of fear. What's wrong? Get in touch with me. With just one shot, were you not going to kill me? Taunted Naruto, leaving Iruka stunned and thinking only, Naruto, you. Naruto and his clones all said, so, if you're not going anywhere, I'll start things off then. Mizuki could only scream as he received the beating of a lifetime. I think I went a little too far, he, said Naruto as he rubbed the back of his head. Iruka was shocked as much as he was proud of Naruto. He now knows that Naruto will definitely surpass all the previous Hokages. Then he called the blonde boy saying, Naruto, come here. I have something I'd like to give you. Outside the Hokage house, one of the agitated shinobi questioned the group, has anyone seen him yet? No, answered the group. The group was shouting and acting like headless chickens. Then the Hokage came forth with calm smile and his favorite smoking pipe. The shinobi acknowledged their leader, Hokage. Sama, now, what should we do? By now, he might as well be gone. All they could hear from their most powerful ninja and well-known leader was, he'll be back soon, as the elderly professor grinned at his perplexing shinobi. The forest of Konoha. Can I open my eyes now, Iruka, sensei? An anxious Naruto asked, and Iruka replied, wait a second, Naruto. He finished his task and took a step back, grinning at Naruto and saying, congratulations, Naruto, and you can open them now. You have graduated and are now a full member of the Konoha Shinobi Corps. Naruto opens his eyes shocked in disbelief. His eyes started to water in the rims as tears began to form. He jumped and hugged his favorite sensei, forgetting that he was injured and in pain. He pushed to the ground, started crying, say that his teacher was the greatest and all that. Haruka had also tears in his eyes, but to contrary, they were tears of pain and agony. Itai? Please stop hugging me. I'm hurt. Now let Naruto go. At the start of a new day, Naruto chuckled.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.